And the Sword Alliance has become the only camp in the starry sky, the strongest, but also the strongest. And Jian Wushuang himself was not idle. Through this 10,000-year period, he has completely cultivated himself and consolidated himself in the ultimate domination. Although he is still far from the breakthrough, he has already laid the foundation. At this point, it is only 50,000 years away from the opening of the universal race. The next day, Jian Wushuang was practicing in retreat. An unexpected person suddenly found Jian Wushuang. Master Lord Jingguan Lord Blue is waiting outside the temple. An ultimate master wearing a sacred armor stepped down at the door of Jian Wushuang's box, congratulating. "Ha, Master Lan?" Wu Jianshuang opened his eyes slowly when he heard the words, and there was a touch of thought in his eyes. Now, in the whole ancient road of the starry sky, Jian Wushuang's only person who can't understand the details is the master of this town. He once asked the overlords and other people who came to the Xingkong ancient road early, but they also didn't know much about Lord Master. They only knew that Master Lan was mysterious and never participated in the dispute. It is more like to record everything that happened in the ancient sky. This person, why suddenly came to find myself? You let Jingguan make the adult wait in the hall, and I will come later. Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang said lightly. Yes, Jane, the ultimate master in charge of communication, went in haste. Wu Jian Wushuang didn't delay for a long time. After collecting the Tailu Jiandian, he also rushed towards the hall. It didn't take long before he met Lord Lan. Master Lan is still wearing a plain blue shirt with a blue veil on his face, which makes Jian Wushuang break through the ultimate dominance. After still unable to see through the veil, Master Lan's true face. This makes Jian Wushuang in his heart cannot help but slightly surprised. Lord Lan, I haven't seen you in a long time. Putting away his thoughts, Jian Wushuang arched her hand at her, a smile on his face. Oh, it's been a long time since you haven't seen me. I often see you. Lord Lan smiled back and smiled. Ha! Jian Wushuang heard a word, didn't understand it, and just wanted to ask what it meant. Then Lord Lan has already started to speak. Jianfeng turned around and joked. Jian Wushuang, I want to see you now. It's not easy on one side. It's got to be rumored and notified. It's such a big show. Master Lan, when you say this, you are breaking me. When Jian Wushuang heard the words, he waved his hands and ordered people to give the seat to Lord Lan. Then he burned a pot of spiritual tea, cleared his throat, and asked, I wonder if you come to me this time. What is it called? Master Lin Lan took a teacup and took a sip, glanced at Jian Wushuang, and replied, Jian Wushuang, I'm here to talk to you about the grand event of the universe. Cosmic event of the universe? Isn't that 50,000 years before we can start? Jian Wu's eyes narrowed, a flash of doubt flashed in his heart, but his face asked calmly, Master, you say now, what does this mean? Click it. Lord Lan put down the teacup and shook his head and said, Jian Wushuang, it seems you don't know. The number of places to participate in the cosmopolitan event is not selected at the same time, but given one after another according to the time period. And then after 50,000 years, really start the grand event of the universe. The three places that dominate the ancient road to the sky are naturally the same. Oh, Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. He wasn't a stupid person. When he heard what he had guessed, he asked, Master, what do you mean? Now you are the first place to attend the Cosmos Grand Event. Is it out? Yes. Master Lan heard the words and nodded slowly. Mandao sword, Mandao sword. Chapter 4301. The first is here. Well, who's the first place? Jian Wushuang raised his teacup, took a sip of tea, and asked calmly. When adults heard the words and laughed, they did not answer but asked instead, You should have an answer in your heart? Wu Jianhua's hands lifted the teacup, paused, groaned one or two, then put the teacup down, looked at Lord Lan, and said, Is the first place? Yes. When Master Lan said that he had selected the first place, and combined with Master Lan at this time to find him, Jian Wushuang was right for the first place. Sure enough, Lord Lan nodded his head and replied, Nature is you, Jian Wushuang. Your performance on the ancient road of Xingkong has been seen by that adult, He has been ordered to me a few days ago, and ordered me to give you the first universe admission to the Grand National Festival. After saying so, she reached out her hand and smiled slightly. Swords matchless, congratulations. Sun Rao had prepared Jian Wushuang's psychology. At this moment, when he heard the exact answer of Lord Lan, he couldn't help but feel a bit distorted. That is the ticket to the cosmopolitan event, held only once every 50 chaos eras. The cosmic event of the universe, the supreme people of all races, discuss the avenue of heaven and earth together. According to the previous rules, the ultimate masters like Jian Wushuang have no chance to touch the threshold. But now Jian Wushuang has become the first admission to the Universe Festival. Wu Jianshuang's heart inevitably sighed with regret. I don't know how many people have left so many dead bones on this ancient road to the sky. 20 will succeed. Too many people have left their lives here, on this ancient starry road. They spent countless years of hard work, and rushed from various places. What they were after was nothing more than the place of the illusory cosmic race. Everyone is looking forward to becoming the beloved lucky one. Since then, it has been soaring, and has become famous in the universe. They followed, they were eager to try. However, with the exception of the few who stood at the top, most of the ultimate masters of the ancient roads in the sky were actually the stepping stones for others. And in the end they became others. And they turned into a lus bones dead die, forgotten by years and time. Starting Qi Jian Wushuang is also one of them. Fortunately, he finally got the qualification for that ticket. Took a deep breath. The next moment, the emotion in Jian Wu's eyes disappeared, replaced by a firmness. Thank you. Wu Jianshou extended his hand, and held a heavy grip with Master Lan. Seeing a slight smile, Lord Ho Lan pulled back his palm, and a white jade appeared under his right hand. Jian Wushuang, this jade pendant is an invitation to the Cosmopolitan Grand Event. Master Lan pushed it with his right hand, and handed this jade pendant to Jian Wushuang. Wu Jian Wushuang nodded his head, carefully and took this jade pendant, and looked down at this jade pendant. Sun Yupei had no words on it, and started with a little cold. It seemed like an ordinary thing that could no longer be ordinary. But the moment that Jian Wushuang felt, it was a frantic expression. He felt as if he was in a chaos. At this time, the universe was not born, and the world was still a yin and yang chaos. He was like the most inconspicuous piece of fine sand in this chaos. The feeling of a drop in the sea and a grain in Taitsong is too trivial. Next moment, I saw this jade pendant, turned into a warm current, disappeared in the sword without hands. Later, the two chatted for a few more words. Lord Lan told him that the Fengshan monument had been cleared, and those who had obtained the quota for the Universal Race event must leave the ancient road of the starry sky to avoid affecting others' invitation for the Universal Race event. Fairness. After saying this, Master Lan plans to leave. The whole hall was like a chill. No one dares to speak before Jian Wushuang speaks. Unconsciously, Jian Wushuang is no longer the nameless man. Now he is the king of the power of killing and killing in the entire ancient sky. He is the only giant in this starry sky ancient road. Chapter 4302. Hey, the second is here. This seed announces a message, you guys listen well. 3 days later, I will leave the ancient road of the sky, and the Fengshan monument will be cleared again to screen out the second place to enter the cosmic event. Sitting on the throne, the sword has no double-sided expression and slowly speaks. Starting as soon as the words of this sentence fell, time, like the same stone stirred up 1,000 layers of waves, the entire ancient road of starry sky boiled up. It seems that the Lord has received the first place to participate in the universal race. What? Master, are you leaving the ancient sky? Fengshan monument will be reset to 0? For a moment, the whole hall was like a blasted boiler, and the sound of discussions began to ring. Even the overlord, Jiao Xingzi, and Ma Luo, the chief patriarch, suddenly raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang. His pupils contracted for a while. Quiet. Jian Wushuang pressed his right hand and said lightly. All of a sudden, the hall was noisy, and then it calmed down. Everyone is forced to suppress the words that have come to their mouths. Looking respectfully at Jian Wushuang, Wu Jianshuang's expression was indifferent, and his eyes swept away from their faces. Although these people did not speak, their expressions were mixed. Wu Jian Wushuang naturally understood what they were thinking, and could not help sneering, for fear that once he left the ancient road of the sky, this seemingly powerful and uninteresting Jianming would fall apart, and revert to the way it was when it was killed before. With regard to this, Jian Wushuang does not intend to forcibly solve it. In the final analysis, Jianming is only a second hand he left behind, only to be able to bundle together when he faces the oppression of major forces in the future. Therefore, what happened to them in private after he left, he didn't care. Anyway, some of the real powerful men with good potential in Shinkong Gulu have already sworn the law with him. This cannot be changed in any way. Well, what I want to say now is the command of the Sword League after I left. Sword Wu's eyes fell on the Overlord, Jiuxing Shengzi, and Morwa Shao, Chief Arama, and said, Overlord, Jiuxing Shengzi Arama, after I left, Jianming is responsible for maintaining the overall situation for you three. But there are problems? Yes. Please obey the decree of the alliance. The three tyrants, Arama, and Jiuxing Shengzi stepped out in one step, and their congratulations should be. Jian Wushuang nodded, his eyes glanced at the three of them. Overlord and Arama both looked normal, their faces were solemn. Both of them were rescued by Jian Wushuang, and Jian Wushuang had a life-saving grace for them. A born promised to surrender, even if he died. He was a son of Jiuxing, and with a bowed head in his eyes, there was a strange color. Jian Wushuang took a close look at the three people's expressions and didn't care, and said, As for the others, it's business as usual, there is no need to change more. After Sun ordered some trivial matters, such as letting Shaoshan command, responsible for commanding the people for the three kings, etc., Jian Wushuang announced that everyone had retreated. Just before the crowd left, Jian Wushuang stopped the Hao Ember standing in the last row to dominate. Wu Jian Wushuang stepped down from the throne. At this moment, he no longer had any majestic momentum, as if he had become the most ordinary boy again. Hao Ember, did you blame me in my heart, and did not arrange you in a commanding position before I left? Jian Wushuang glanced at him with a slight smile. Hao Emperor dominated the statement and quickly explained. Master Bloodsword, I dare not think so, although I am dull, but I also understand that you do not want to attract too much attention, Master Bloodsword, so as not to be caught envy. Dominated by Hao Hao is the only person who now calls Jian Wushuang as the Bloodsword Master. As if in his heart, Jian Wushuang is still the one who took him in the ancient road of the starry sky and passed 5 levels, and cut 6 generals. If you can think so, then I'm assured. Jian Wushuang smiled a moment, then paused and groaned. Hao Ember, the reason why I didn't put you in the top position of the Sword Alliance is just as you said. Once I leave, this ancient road in the starry sky is afraid of chaos again. If you assume the commanding position at that time, you will definitely be regarded as the target of the fire, but you may be killed for yourself. After saying that, Jian Wushuang patted Hao Ember on the shoulder and continued. I wait for the monk. The position is actually a vanity, and you don't need to worry about it. As long as you are strong enough, everything is just a blessing. Master Bloodsword, I understand. Hao Emperor heard the words and nodded heavily. Jian Wushuang said. He took out a bottle of glass and jade, and said, Hao Ember, in this jade bottle, there are 2 drops of venom that I made by holding the Tianxi Langjun poisonous tooth. There were originally 3 drops, but there was another drop I used for other purposes, and I will not give it to you. There are 2 drops of venom in it. As long as it does not meet the existence of invincible dominator, I want to come in this ancient road in the sky. There is no one can hurt you again. Is this too expensive? Just as Hao Emperor was still hesitating, Jian Wushuang has doubled his right hand again, and a small black sword suddenly appeared in his hand, and said lightly, Hao Ember, you have collected this small sword. This is the self-defense made by you specially before I leave. A total of my 3 sword chi are sealed on this small sword. One is stronger than the other. In terms of power, it is much more powerful than those 2 drops of venom. If you use it properly, even if it is similar to Jiuxing Shengzi, when the body is not a powerful invincible master, With the last sword energy you are enough to kill him. After finishing speaking, Jian Wushuang's expression gradually became calm, and finally she said in a deep voice, "However, these 5 kinds of protectors, you must remember to use them with caution. Otherwise, once you have used all 5 protectors, if you get any more people in the sky, no one can save you." Yes, how Emperor's expression also became calm, and he did not dare to neglect, and gifted his glass-glazed vase and black small sword to him, carefully closed it, and then focused and said, "Master Bloodsword, rest assured, I will take good care of the Sword Alliance for you." Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help but smile slightly and said, "Jiangming is just a matter of fate, and you don't need to care too much. It is you who can be the same person who has suffered and suffered together with me. After I leave, I am afraid that the battle for the Fengshan Monument will be more intense and crazy. Therefore, I just hope that you can protect yourself and improve your strength." After Wu finished speaking, Jian Wushuang stopped saying more, and strode away after smiling at him. 23 days later, walking in the 18th city of Shinkong Ancient Road, countless people showed off respectfully. Wu Jianwu, wearing a black robe, wearing a hood and carrying a sandalwood sword box, stepped away from Shinkong Ancient Road and disappeared into the sight of everyone, like a legend in Shinkong Ancient Road, and finally closed the curtain. I walked from the dust with a sword, covered in mud and unknowing. I returned from my fame, with the breeze as my companion full of joy. Chapter 4303. The first is here. Wu Jianwu left. He went away by the wind and sword, past 18 cities, and came to the first city of Shinkong Ancient Road. Some newcomers who didn't come to know Jian Shuang talked about each other and walked past him, depicting the beautiful prospect that they will shine in the ancient road of the starry sky. Jian Wushuang looked back and glanced back. In this starry sky ancient road, he stayed for tens of thousands of years, from an ordinary 5th-ranked ordinary master, to become the strongest that swept the entire universe. Dominate the strong. Here he left too many legends. Now finally we have to say goodbye. At this moment, Sai has some emotions, but more of them are still homesick. He took a deep breath. Jian Wushuang turned resolutely, and stepped on the exit passage of the first city. For a while boundless darkness struck, and when Jian Wushuang opened his eyes again, he had already appeared outside the ancient sky. For tens of thousands of years, the changes outside the Shinkong Ancient Road were not significant, and there were still people from various major forces stationed here, drinking and buying the magic drugs and materials brought out from the Shinkong Ancient Road. After just glancing at Jian Wushuang, they didn't manage it anymore and resumed their work. Don't look at Jian Wushuang. Now he is famous, but there are few who can really recognize him. The pictures of him fighting with the prison dragon are basically just circulating among the high-level forces. What Wu Jinshuang did not know was when he walked out of the ancient sky, a hawk-nosed man hiding in the air, sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes sharply. "Boy, you're finally out." The black eagle's supreme gaze passed through the void, and he looked at Xiang Jianwushuang steadily, and the corner of his mouth gradually evoked a cruel smile. He waited for nearly 10,000 years, and was accompanied by the boring universe every day. His heart was already impatient to the extreme. At this moment, he saw Jian Wushuang walking out of the ancient road in the sky, and he could not hold back the killing intention in his heart. Boom! Instantly he shot a palm, pressing the sword unparalleled. Under this palm, the starry sky in front of the entire ancient sky is shaking with madness. A mighty power to destroy the world coming to the world. What is this? All of a sudden, the ultimate masters who were sipping in front of the ancient gate of the starry sky, their faces changed greatly, and they looked horribly into the air. This is the supreme atmosphere. A supreme shot. No, run away. Countless people burst into bursts, as birds and beasts scattered, and some of the slow-moving ultimate masters, just by rubbing the palm of their body with this palm, were instantly annihilated, and the gods were destroyed. Wu Jian looked up suddenly, his pupils shrank. He felt that the supreme palm falling from the sky was locked on him. Who is it? Wu Jianshuang's face was gloomy to the extreme. He did not expect that he had just stepped out of the starry sky, and someone had come to intercept him. Are you two virtual temple? Or dragon? Wu Rong couldn't wait for the sword, and Wu Jia's exquisite sword emerged from the sheath instantly, turning into a shocking silver rainbow, splitting towards the giant palm that fell from the sky. Today's swords are unparalleled, and once again use the sword to cut star. How terrible the might! Even if invincible dominates the face, under this sword will be killed. I saw this sword, just like the Milky Way coming out of it. In a short breath, it condensed all the surrounding energy, and the silver sword rainbow was shining to the extreme, releasing an endless brilliance, severely chopped on the giant palm. However, such a horrible sword was cut on the giant palm, but it just stagnated a little, and was eroded by the horrible power in the giant palm, and pressed again towards the sword unparalleled. However, this lag time is enough for Jian Wushuang. Ha! Wu Jianwu stepped on his feet, moved away instantly, and appeared 100 miles away. 1. Omega Omega Omega. Kai 1Z. Sikarub. Pressing down on that palm, the pressed void was directly photographed into a huge black hole, which shattered countless void fragments. Starting Jian Wushuang, who was 100 miles away, panted slightly, as if he felt something, looked up into a void. Next moment, he saw a man in black with a hawk nose, walking out of the void with a hand. Jian Wushuang, do you still remember who this seed is? The man in black with a sneer saw Jian Wushuang dodging this palm, didn't care, and said with a sarcasm, "It's you." Yan Jian's eyes twinkled, and after taking a deep breath, he forced his heart's throbbing down and said with a sneer, "Extreme Blackhawk, how can I not remember?" For this person, when the two sides of the sword traveled the universe without a sword, the Blackhawk Supreme in the Diwu Temple, that nearly killed him in the Jiui Star Field. At the beginning, if it was not the God Pavilion's heart-struck supreme shot that prevented him, I am afraid that Jian Wushuang, who is already dead in the hand of the Black Eagle Supreme, is deprived of his special life level. Jian Wushuang, I haven't seen it for tens of thousands of years, but this one misses you very much. The Black Hawk stared at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Although he was laughing, the coldness in his voice was enough to freeze the blood. Wu Jianshuang heard his face expressionless, mobilized as much as he could, and his whole body was strained to the extreme. This is supreme, the highest existence in the universe. Even though it was him, he was already 1,000 times stronger than when he first met the Black Hawk Supreme. But now facing the Black Hawk Supreme, Jian Wushuang still feels a mountain-like pressure and comes down the mountain. He knows that this will be the most dangerous battle he has ever encountered. This battle no one can help him. All he can rely on is himself. Jian Wushuang, this seat now gives you two choices. The first one is to follow this seat to obediently return to the Diwu Temple for sanctions. The second is to deprive you of special life levels to honor this seat. Destroy the Spear of God, you choose. The Black Eagle Supreme complexion looks as if the of life and death has been set for Jian Wushuang. As if Jian Wushuang has become the fish on his chopping board, and let it be slaughtered. Jian Wushuang, the taste of being deprived of a special life stiffly, I don't think you will be willing to experience it in your whole life. Speaking of which, a cruel color flashed in the eyes of the Black Eagle Supreme. Jian Wushuang heard the breath and breathed out a sigh of relief. I choose. Oh, is this going to be captured? Blackhawk frowned, smiling slightly. Jian Wushuang, this time you're quite interesting. I didn't wait for him to finish. I choose you to die. Boom. Wu Jian stepped on the steps without a pair of steps, instantly acting like a missile, pulling out a white air wave, and slamming towards the Black Hawk Supreme. The horrifying sword gas strangled the quartet, forming a groundbreaking half-moon swordman, and in just one breath, he came to the top of the Black Hawk Supreme, and slanted him away. Give me a shame, look for death. The Black Eagle Supreme complexion instantly became gloomy, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Chapter 4304. Second more. Wow. Facing this sword that divided the universe across the sea, and turned up the shocking white waves, the Black Eagle Supreme expression was somber and grunted coldly, but he raised his finger and pointed toward the sword. That sword was unparalleled. Jian Wushuang, it seems that you still don't understand how big the gap is between the ultimate dominator and the supreme. That's the difference in power. The Black Hawk shook his head and suddenly, centered on his fingertips, a force that twisted space and time, folded space, burst out suddenly. Ha! Jian Wushuang's magnificent sword was hit by the Black Hawk Supreme again, and it suddenly became like a fortress piled up on the beach. It began to fall apart. What? Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank for a while, and a peculiar look surged on his face, and he couldn't bear to think about it, and felt a force that completely twisted and folded, banging heavily on his chest. Ha! Jian Wushuang's whole body retreated sharply, and a huge pit appeared in his chest. The Black Eagle Supreme saw this, and his negative hand sneered. Sword unparalleled. Give up the stupid struggle. Recognize the status quo. The gap between the supreme and the dominating realm. Nothing can make up for. Jian Wushuang heard the words. His expression was cloudy for a while. He has infinitely elevated the supreme power in his heart. But only when he truly faced the supreme at this moment did he realize that the horror of the supreme far exceeded his expectations. I am afraid that the world is called comparable to the supreme, but it just says that there are some killing tricks, which can be comparable to the supreme ordinary blow. Come again. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang clenched the Wu weapon sword in his hand, and his eyes showed a strong fighting spirit. Ha! At the next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot, and the whole man swept up again, splitting a sword towards the supreme Black Hawk. Open the sky. Hey! For a while the devil wailed. The Buddha's groaning voice poured out, and the Wu weeping sword quickly trembled, and a blood-colored sword rushed out, splitting towards the Black Eagle Supreme. The sword is unparalleled, useless. The Black Hawk shook his head in contempt, facing the shocking sword, just throwing his sleeve. A black rainbow immediately flung out with this sleeve. This simple one sleeve. It seemed to have directly blasted out 1,000,000 tons of force, pushing the void into a channel, and hit the swordman. The blood-colored swordman was directly worn away. Just then, a low, indifferent voice sounded in his ear. Talented supernatural. Talented, amazing life. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. The law of the universe, 10 times the power of willpower. Wow. Suddenly countless realms came, with sword blessings blessed by various forces. His breath began to skyrocket, and in just a few breaths of time, if the light of coercion, the sword blessings would have to surpass the Black Eagle Supreme. In addition to Tailu Jiandian's 2 killing moves, Jian Wushuang already has the means. Under the suppression of the primitive universe and the shock of life, the supreme atmosphere of the Black Hawk has begun to weaken indefinitely. Oh! Just as the Black Hawk gave a faint whisper, a cold voice sounded again. Chopper Star. Suddenly space and time seemed to stagnate. Countless energies in the universe converged towards the sword without hands. Whether it was the shards of the void or the dark matter in the universe, etc., all turned into the purest energy, just like Baichuan entered the sea. Radiated in all directions, it finally merged into the sword without hands, and turned into a silver sword rainbow of 5,000 feet. When this silver sword Hongfang appeared, it instantly took away all the glory in the world, and it was so dazzling that it was hard to look straight, as if a volume of Tianhe was held in the hands of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang's black hair was dangling, and his expression was indifferent, just like the peerless sword immortal. Cut! With the sound of a cold drink, Jian Wushuang's right hand waved down, and the silver sword rainbow up to 5,000 feet was finally chopped down towards the Black Eagle Supreme. Oh, the previous trick was just a cover. Is this sword really a killing trick? The Black Hawk brow lightly commented casually. This sword is quite good. There is already some infinitely close to the power of the Supreme, but it is a pity that if it is not the Supreme, it is the ants. Shaking his head, Black Hawk turned over with his right hand, and a black sharp spear appeared in his hand. This short spear exudes a weird breath. Jian Wushuang just glanced at it, and felt an aversion of disgust. Break me! The Black Hawk sighed, and the short spear fiercely stabbed to the ground. For a moment, no matter it was the primitive universe or the shock of life, it was as if it encountered natural enemies. Sword unparalleled. Do you still recognize this extermination spear? the Black Eagle sneered. His right hand quickly printed, and a black iris exploded quickly, striking the silver sword rainbow of Jian Wushuang's nearly 5,000 feet. Bang bang! Suddenly, the silver sword rainbow quickly collapsed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Jian Wushuang's face changed slightly, and he would not forget the Exterminator Spear. According to the Supreme Killing Sword, the Exterminator Spear is a magic weapon specially used by Diwu Temple to restrain the special life, such as Jian Wushuang. The advantages of cutting them to these special lives. Sword unparalleled, it's time to take this seat. The Black Eagle sneered, and swung his right hand heavily, and the stab of the Extermination Spear suddenly stabbed at the sword without a pair. Jian Wushuang's face was dignified, and he expelled hundreds of swords quickly, in order to stop this Extermination Spear. However, everything was useless. This Exterminator Spear brought up a long tail flame, and there was a burst of blast in the void where it was swept away. Open a fist-sized blood hole in your chest. Theoretically, with the restoration of Jian Wushuang's divine power, these injuries will be restored immediately. However, when Jian Wushuang poured out divine power to recover the divine body, he suddenly felt that the broken blood hole, there is even a faint power, that is suppressing the recovery of his body, and it is spreading around at a slow speed. This is the power of the Exterminator Spear. The next moment, the Black Hawk's figure flashed, as if moving instantly, appeared above Jian Wushuang, raised his right foot, and stepped down towards Jian Wushuang fiercely. A blast of shaking came from this place, and this foot directly stepped on the sole of the sword. Next moment. Chapter 4305. Karub. After the step of the Black Hawk Supreme, Jian Wushuang only felt that his bones and muscles were shaking. He tried to surge up the power to push the Black Hawk Supreme apart, but when he accumulated the power and hit the Black Hawk Supreme, he only felt just like a ball of cotton hitting a copper wall and an iron wall. The Black Eagle Supreme is unmoved. Perhaps the total power of the two is similar, but the quality is completely different. Extreme Divine Realm and Ultimate Master are completely different in essence. Is this the supreme power? Jian Wushuang's pupil shrank, and there was a consciousness in his heart. At this moment, when he truly faces the Supreme, he finally knows how big the gap is between the Supreme Divine Realm and the Ultimate Master. Someone has done statistics in the universe. There are tens of thousands of star fields in the universe, and countless astral fields. Among these tens of thousands of star fields, the Supreme on the bright side adds up to less than 100. How many dominate the Ultimate? Too much to count. From this we can see how much the difference between the Ultimate Master and the Supreme. Even though he is the strongest master of the universe, such as King Julong, in the peak period of his strength, he is only comparable to the Supreme. What is the solution? Refers to the supreme blow of King Jiujia. But this does not mean that the King of Nine Dragons can truly be compared with the Supreme. Jian Wushuang, aren't you very powerful? Aren't you the first person in Shinkongulu? Now you stand up for this seat. Black Eagle Supreme looked down at Jian Wushuang, his face full of sneer. He said as he stepped on the right foot of Sword Wushuang hardly. And for a moment, the sword's body suddenly made an overwhelming clicking sound. Under this step, countless bones and veins of the sword unparalleled. In the distance, many daring Ultimate Masters did not leave, but watching this scene from afar, there was a chill in their hearts. Is this the supreme terror? Jian Wushuang, who is able to cross the invincible ancient road in the starry sky, has no backhand in front of the Supreme. Too strong. The sword before Wushuang's sword has been beyond my understanding. It is estimated to be able to kill anyone who dominates the realm. I never thought it would be broken only by the Supreme Sleeve. It is no wonder that ever since the birth of the universe, there has never been a record of the Lord's victory over the Supreme. The supreme power is too terrifying. The sword is unparalleled. They shook their heads. At the beginning, they didn't know it was Jian Wushuang. But as the Black Hawk Supreme called Jian Wushuang's name, they suddenly came to realize that this handsome young man with a stern look was the latest in the universe. Wu's sword is unparalleled. There were many people. After Jian Wu double-clicked to kill the prisoner dragon, It was deemed that Jian Wushuang had the qualifications to sit on par with Supreme. But until now, when they saw the scene where Jian Wushuang was crushed by Black Hawk Supreme, I realized that my eyelids were too shallow, and I didn't know the gap between the Master and the Supreme. Starting that kind of gap is almost like of nature. No matter what the amazing talents and supernatural powers, it can't be crossed. The Black Eagle Supreme looked back at them, and did not mean to drive them away. He is not a genius. Breaking through the Supreme can be described as barely extreme. Even if he is in the territory of the Supreme God, he is not a strong person. Therefore, he particularly likes to step on those feet with amazing talents and humiliate. To satisfy the perverted pleasure in my heart. The sword is unparalleled. Obediently surrender to this seat. Maybe this seat can give you a happy, otherwise, this seat will crush your bones inch by inch, and then strip your cultivation and special life. Let you feel the ultimate pain. Sun Zuibo's eyes were cold, and he replied word by word. Jian Wushuang was intercepted in the ancient road by the sky. What? Who intercepted Jian Wushuang? There are a few supreme faces facing each other, and there is a little in my heart. Sun Zuibo's eyes stared into the distance coldly. Diwu Temple Blackhawk Supreme. After speaking, the Supreme Master of Bloodwaves no longer cares about them. Under one step, the whole person has left the Palace of Life. The next moment, his cold voice sounded in the hall. I'm here to save the sword unparalleled. Whoever blocks me today is the enemy of my blood. Chapter 4306. This. After hearing the words of hesitation on the faces of the Supreme Masters, they just remembered to chase after him, and advised the Supreme Master of Blood to not be so reckless, and an indifferent ancient voice sounded from their ears. Let him go. The Supreme Master heard each other face to face, and finally nodded inside. Yes. Supreme Lord. Outside of the Temple of Life, the Bloodwave Supreme turned into a scorpion, directly exploding all speed, and killed towards the ancient road of the starry sky. I saw him at the Gate of Life Shrine at the last moment, and then he appeared on another star field. At this moment, Bloodwave Supreme directly used the star jumping technique, and each time the figure flickered, it was hundreds of millions of miles. However, before he walked halfway from the ancient road to the sky, a black giant hand shot at him. Bloodwave, stay. Okay. Bloodwave paused suddenly, and after smashing the giant hand with a random blow, he stared at the void shot by the giant hand. I saw a majestic middle-aged man wearing a purple gold suit, wearing a purple gold crown with flowers, birds, and beasts embroidered on it, stepping out of the void step by step. This person is a mysterious and unpredictable master of the Diwu Temple. Seeing the Supreme, he suddenly smiled angrily and said, "This place is so big-faced that the master of the Diwu Temple actually took the initiative to block it." After hearing the words, the master of Diwu Shrine smiled slightly and said, "Oh, your blood is the chief supreme of Life Shrine. When others come to stop you, this deity is naturally uneasy, so you have to do it yourself." He Xuanwen heard that even if he faced the master of the Diwu Shrine in the famous universe, he didn't have half a dreadful look on his face, and his eyes flashed deadly. "Kuroba, do you really want to stop me here?" The master of the Diwu Shrine stepped in the void, stood with his hands up and shook his head. "Blood, you give up. You are not your opponent. Sword is unparalleled. No one can save him today." Bloodwave Supreme heard that his face was expressionless, but in his heart a heart kept sinking. He knew that the black feather was right. He was not his opponent. Taking a deep breath, the Bloodwave Supreme looked coldly at the master of Diwu Temple and said, "In order to kill this disciple who is the ultimate master of the realm, you have really worked hard. Not only did you send the Supreme to intercept and kill, you as the temple, it's such a great skill that the Lord himself came to stop it." The master of the Diwu Temple. How can I not listen to the irony in the discourse of Supreme Master Qinghai? But he just smiled indifferently. Your Palace of Life has already produced a king of 9 calamities, and there must never be another 9 calamities. King. After a pause, he shook his head again and said, "No, according to the strength of Jiu Jia Wang in the ultimate dominion, compare with Jian Wushuang. I am afraid that after the sword Wushuang breaks through the Supreme, The strength will be far better than Jiujiawang. Once it exists, it will naturally kill as soon as possible, so as to prevent the future. Bloodwave Supreme heard the expression gloomy, his eyes flashed to the extreme. After a moment, Bloodwave Supreme took a deep breath and slowly said, "Hey you, let's wait and see, my disciple may not die." "Is that so?" The master of Diwu Shrine smiled slightly, not caring. Bloodwave Supreme heard no more answer, but can only hope that Jian Wushuang can create a miracle again and get out of the hands of the Black Eagle Supreme, such as once again using the last life-saving magical power against the prison dragon. However, what he didn't know was that Diwu Shrine had already conducted a detailed and extreme investigation of Jian Wushuang, including Jian Wushuang's last divine power decomposition, which was also under their control. It can be said that they have made 100% preparations for killing the Sword Unparalleled. Xingkong Ancient Road entrance. Jian Wushuang, this time you will not be as lucky as last time. This time, no one will come to save you again. The Black Eagle supremely looked down at Jian Wushuang, sneer with cruel color. Sword Unparalleled, come on. Let this seat torture you little by little, let you die in pain. The Black Eagle supremely grinned, and forced his feet, began to start the sword Wushuang from his feet, crushing his body by an inch. Click, click. Jian Wushuang's indestructible body, under the Black Hawk's stepping down, suddenly broke down and broke apart. In addition, the Black Eagle supremely controlled the divine power to a subtle level, which would not only make Jian Wushuang's body completely collapse and explode, but also make Jian Wushuang feel endless suffering. This supreme mind is very good at poisoning. How much hatred this person has with Jian Wushuang, to torture Jian Wushuang so much. Jiang Wushuang really has a lot of fate. It was so difficult to kill the prisoner dragon in the Xingkong Ancient Road. But unexpectedly, he just came out of the Xingkong Ancient Road and encountered the supreme interception. In the distance, some of the ultimate masters watching this scene shook their heads and booed. In their hearts, the Black Hawk is extremely shameless, but no one dares to say it, and can only shake his head constantly. Jian Wushuang, do you really regret it now? It was better to be killed by this seat when you were in Jui Starfield. Otherwise, how would you be tortured now? The Black Eagle Supreme laughed a lot, but when he looked at the sword unparalleled from beginning to end, he suddenly felt boring. Why was he dying and not asking for mercy? Shouldn't he kneel in front of himself at this time, begging himself to spare him? Shouldn't he cry with tears, despair and remorse? Well, swords matchless die. The Black Eagle snorted coldly, and there was a murder in his eyes. No longer intending to delay, he raised his foot and stepped towards Jian Wushuang's head. This foot is rushing to the sword unparalleled life. It's now. Jian Wu's eyes flickered. Wu Wei's Excalibur had disappeared quietly, and boundless darkness poured out from under him, toward the Black Eagle Supreme. Forever night. With a low sip, and a moment of time, a ray of black mist completely wrapped the Black Hawk Supreme. This is. Suddenly the Black Eagle Supreme had no time to say a word, and was immediately dragged into the kingdom of the night. A huge round black ball wrapped the Black Hawk Supreme inside. A strip of breath began to take away everything that belongs to the Black Hawk Supreme. Jian Wushuang took advantage of this opportunity to swoop up, turned his hands to take out a lot of magic medicine from the Qianquan ring, and took it by mouth. Chapter 4307. I saw the Black Eagle Supreme at this moment. Although he was not dead, he was also embarrassed to the extreme. The whole person was at least 10 years old. His arrogant face had reached the extreme, and his body was still strong, like skinny, dry and thin. Sword unparalleled, how dare you hurt this seat? The cold mang flashed in the eyes of the Black Eagle Supreme, and his anger was extremely extreme. Sunda is dignified. The top figure in the entire universe was hurt by an ultimate master of Jian Wushuang district. What a shame! Sword unparalleled, you it! The Black Eagle Supreme jumped out of these 7 characters from the teeth, and the next moment his body flashed, and he flew towards the sword unparalleled. I saw that his figure seemed to be transformed into a huge eagle pendant that could last for 9 days to catch the moon, and the next 5 oceans to catch the puppets, pierced through the void directly, and 5 fingers fought hard towards the sword unparalleled. Under this grasp, countless voids shattered, directly exploding a galaxy. A deafening hawk sounded and sang in the universe. Good job. Yan Jianhui's eyes flashed coldly, facing the claw-pinching Xinghe. Instead of being afraid, he took a step forward, and his hunting spirits surged in his eyes. Black Hawk Supreme, this sword, you are optimistic. Take a deep breath. Jian Wushuang coldly spit out 2 words. Dawn. Ding. A chirp sounded, and then Wushan Jian and Wu weapon sword in his hand disappeared. Next moment, just a little golden light. The entire universe seems to be transformed into a line of golden light. Under this line of golden light, the perennial dark universe has been torn apart, and it has been dazzled by the mapped brilliance. Immediately, we saw this line of golden light, which struck fiercely the Black Hawk Extreme, swept away like lightning. Ha! Take this sword, cut off the starry sky, and cut through the chaos. This sword is like the dawn shot from the depths of the night, driving out everything. Yifengrui, overbearing, crush, destroyed, unbreakable. This is the true meaning of the dawning sword. Many of the ultimate masters who are watching the battle in the distance, feeling the sharp sword, are stunned and trembling. How can there be such a terrible sword art in the world? Fighting swordsmanship. This sword is too scary. Under this sword, have finished eggs? At this moment, the ultimate dominator of all watching wars is all exclaimed. Even the Black Hawk Extreme, who was attacked and killed, has a shrinking pupil and a slight change in his face. This son is only the ultimate master. Why is swordplay so terrifying? That kind of power. Even feels guilty? He didn't wait for him to think about it. Jian Wushuang had already killed it. Like a star collision, the Black Eagle Supreme turned into a black shadow of Eagle Peng, and the sword unparalleled into a line of golden light, collided fiercely. Ha! A huge shock wave spread out, and directly pushed some small planets around them to thousands of feet. The next moment, I saw a line of golden light transformed by the sword unparalleled, passing by the Black Eagle Supreme, and stopped until it was hundreds of square feet. Jingguang dissipated, and turned into a breathless sword unparalleled. Qi Jian Wushuang was trembling all over, holding the right hand of Wu weapon sword handle. It was tingling for a while. He turned around, and slowly looked towards the Black Hawk Supreme. I saw the Black Hawk Supreme standing in the void, with no change in appearance. Suddenly the metamorphosis protrudes. Ha! The next moment, breaking dawn Jiani burst out. Countless blood shot out from the Black Eagle's 988,300,000 pores. In the sky, as if there was a blood rain, the avenues all wailed. At this moment, the Black Eagle Extreme was miserable to the extreme. He wore his hair, and a black suit hung on his body like a rag strip. Blood was overflowing from his nasal eyes at the same time. Sword unparalleled, the Black Eagle yelled loudly, and then turned his head sharply to look at Jian Wushuang. His heart was frightened and angry. The sword just now is really thrilling. If the power of the sword Wushuang is half a point stronger, or if it is motivated by the supreme divine power, I am afraid that today he really capsized in the gutter and planted it in the hands of the sword. Where did this supernatural power come from? The thoughts of the Black Eagle Supreme mind flashed. First of all, the kingdom of the night. There is already a taste of the kingdom of God in it, but it is the highest level of the universe that he has never realized. Immediately after this is the dawning sword, which is the ultimate sublimation on the kendo, an invincible sword move that combines thousands of kendos in one. This class of supernatural powers is enough to stir the entire universe. It is by no means the ultimate master can create it. Even he is not even qualified to touch this type of supernatural powers. Where did he get it from? The Black Eagle supremely changed his mind and looked at Jian Wushuang at the same time. His heart was filled with deep fear. This sub-region finally dominates the realm, and now you can shake the supreme. If you wait until he becomes the supreme, then who in the universe can rule him? No, you must strangle him in the cradle while this child is not yet fully grown. Thinking of this, Black Hawk Supreme heart no longer half-minded playfulness, Morihan murderous in his eyes. Jian Wushuang, it seems that this seat really takes you seriously. After speaking, the Black Hawk Supreme held the destroyer spear and struck towards the sword unparalleled. Ha! A splendid mighty power, spreading wildly. At this moment, Black Hawk Supreme has no reservations anymore. Novel. The breath of that Supreme is like a rushing wave, and it is squeezing in all directions. Under this breath of supremacy, all the nations want to surrender, and they feel shocked for 9 days and 10 places. With the Black Hawk Supremacy as the center, the thousands of places around it are transformed into a sea of anger and trembling. Sure enough, can't even break dawn with the sword? The sword flickered in Wu Jian's eyes, and he sighed slightly. He immediately made a decision in his heart. If you don't want to die today, I'm afraid you have to use your best killer. It's just that this is not the place to cast the Taro Excalibur. You have to find a place without people. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang said indifferently to the Black Eagle Supreme. Black Eagle, don't you want to kill me? Come on. After finishing speaking, Jian Wushuang's body twisted, and all the divine power burst into speed as soon as he stepped on his foot, and he shot towards the distance. He remembered that not far from the ancient sky, there was an abandoned dead star field. The void cracks are everywhere, the time and space are chaotic, and a void storm will be blown at any time, leaving no one at all. Sword unparalleled, you can't escape. The Black Eagle supremely sneered, erupting at the same speed, and chased away towards the sword unparalleled. Wu Jianwushuang heard the words, looked back at the Black Hawk Supreme, and sneered in his heart. Go chase Black Hawk, there is your burial ground. Chapter 4308. I saw 2 streams of light in the universe, passing across the sky like thunder. Jian Wushuang's divine power erupted as much as he could, but he swept 1,000,000 miles under one footstep. And behind him, the Black Hawk's supreme speed was also extremely fast. On his back, a giant hawk phantom ghosted. The wing is just a flapping edge, which is the shuttle through the void. How can this be so fast? The Black Hawk's eyes narrowed and his face was gloomy. In his opinion, although Jian Wushuang is not supreme, both the strength of the divine power and the attack power, including the speed, already have the supreme level of combat power. If it is not the power of the sword Wushuang, it has not yet broken into the supreme divine power. And he soon after entering the realm of ultimate domination, today's victory and defeat, I'm afraid it's hard to say. However, fortunately, there is the exterminator spear in his own hand. Because of the talent and supernatural power brought by the special life, all of them will be weakened by the exterminator spear. Thinking of this, the Black Eagle Supreme was slightly relaxed, licking the corner of his mouth and sneered. Jian Wushuang, after this seat catches up with you, he will draw your soul out, and force you to ask how many kendo magical powers, and then wipe out your divine power. As the voice dropped, the Black Eagle Supreme opened his mouth, and uttered an eagle cry. On his back, a pair of huge black wings emerged. Under the swaying, the sound barrier was instantly opened, a roaring explosion was heard, and the distance from the sword unparalleled was quickly drawn closer. So fast, Jian Wushuang's pupils shrunk slightly. If they continue at this speed, they will not be caught by the Black Hawk Supreme for a long time. The abandoned star field is at least halfway away from his current position. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. Jian Wushuang sighed, and began to burn the divine power directly. The extremely fast speed actually surged a lot, turning it into a streamer, sprinting forward. The distance that was originally pulled between them was suddenly pulled away again. Oh, is there any secret technique used? The Black Hawk gave a faint whisper, and his face was not surprised. He has seen too many secret techniques at the price of them. But these secret techniques often have one thing in common. That is, the time they can be used is very short. Sword unparalleled. I have to take a look at this seat. How long can you persist in this mystery? The Black Eagle Supreme flashed in the eyes, and at the same time made a decision in his heart. Once he caught up with the sword unparalleled, he must never say more, and be headed directly. Otherwise, with this endless stream of magical powers, who knows what moths will come out later. Sword Wushuang kept moving forward, while the divine power erupted, while constantly taking out the top divine medicine into the mouth, quickly restored the divine power. Under such full burst of divine power, even as a perfect special life, he seemed to be struggling to recover. Of course, the most important factor that caused all this was the blood hole in his chest that was broken by the destroyer's spear. Until now, the blood hole caused to him by the destroying spear has not been restored. A strange burning power, which constantly erodes the body, requires him to spend a lot of divine power to suppress this strange power. Both were extremely fast, and within a few breaths of time they completely disappeared at the intersection of stars and sky. Many ultimate masters who were still watching the war saw this scene and had to regret sighing. I don't know if the sword is unparalleled. Can I escape this supreme killing? Jian Wushuang and Black Eagle Supreme are constantly moving in the starry sky. With the gradual killing of Jian Wushuang, Black Eagle Supreme cannot help but notice that the surrounding galaxies and galaxies are decreasing. Even the rules of the void. It is gradually becoming weak. However, the Black Hawk Supreme didn't care. Only when Jian Wushuang was panicking. He can clearly see that his distance from the sword unparalleled is constantly being drawn in. Nearby, Jian Wushuang's black hair flew, and the Black Eagle Supreme could feel that the distance between him and him was getting closer. Jian Wushuang could also feel that his distance from the abandoned star field was also drawing in at a rapid speed. Even far apart, he could already see the vague outline of the abandoned star field. After half a column of incense, Jian Wushuang's footsteps stopped abruptly. Don't run away? The Black Hawk's eyes narrowed, and then he found that he had reached an abandoned starfield, and there were scattered fissures everywhere. From time to time, there were space storms blowing, and there were no people in the surrounding area. However, he still didn't care and shook his head. That being the case then, sword unparalleled, ready to die. After that, thousands of great divine powers rushed into his hands, and he raised the spear of annihilation, and then planned to stab toward the sword unparalleled. Now, he doesn't want to talk to Jian Wushuang anymore. He just wants to kill Jian Wushuang, and then quickly. Suddenly, facing the sword of the Black Eagle Supreme Wuxia, he spoke faintly. Black Hawk, you are wrong. It is not me but you who are about to die. The Black Hawk chuckled and replied. Jian Wushuang, I really admire you when you say this, and you are all dead. You don't even know it. There is a lot of nonsense here. You do not believe? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow, slowly turned around, and looked at the Black Eagle Supreme calmly. The Black Eagle shook his head, and was unwilling to waste his lips, raised the destroyer spear, and killed the sword unparalleled. Destroy the spear with the power of destroying the world. Kill fiercely towards the sword unparalleled. The turbulent wind blew up the black hair of Jian Wushuang, and he looked at the destroying spear that ruined the sky and shattered the void, and his expression became unhappy. Click. Suddenly, a sandalwood sword box on his back opened a crack. Click and wipe. This crack is getting more and more. Suddenly, sandalwood sword box split. A stalk is wrapped in 9 sealed vines, forming an oblique sword with a scabbard, rising. The first Feng shattered. A terrifying atmosphere of terror and chaos emanated gradually. Black Eagle, this sword. I originally intended to leave it to the dragons, but unfortunately, I was hit by you. Jian Wushuang sighed softly. The second Feng shattered. The horror of the heavens and earth, and the chaotic boiling atmosphere soared again. In this breath, www.novel. Countless space storms that swept the stars directly collapsed, and the fierce spear that stabbed fiercely was stagnation for a moment, as if worn on an invisible wall. Stuck in the middle of Jian Wushuang and Black Hawk Supreme. Third root. Fourth root. Fifth root. Ninth root. When the 9th function vine shattered, the huge and terrifying sword pressure had destroyed all the stars in this abandoned star field. Under the pressure of this sword, the Black Eagle Extreme shivered, almost kneeling down. A whole body of dark gold. The sword body is full of mysterious veins, and the position of the sword handle is a scarlet 7-footed Excalibur, which completely reveals its appearance. Taro Excalibur is finally here. Chapter 4309. This is. The Black Eagle supremely looks at the Taro Excalibur hanging high in the stars, a memory that has long been sealed by hundreds of chaotic ages. And then it comes out. Taro Excalibur. The Black Hawk Supreme was terrified. The kingdom of the night and the dawn. He does not practice kendo, and he still does not recognize it. But this powerful universe has once suppressed the incomparable Taro Supreme Saber of heaven and earth. How can he not recognize it? At that time, when he was still in charge of the realm, the Taro Swordsman, who was invincible and undefeated, standing on the top of the universe, was holding this Taro sword, which was amazing forever and defeated Tianjiao. Even now, he still remembers that when Taro Supreme held the Taro Excalibur, one person and one sword alone smashed the unique style of the universe. However, isn't the Taro Excalibur already sealed with Taro Supreme? Sword unparalleled. How can you and you have a tailored sword? The Black Hawk Supreme couldn't care less about the fear in his heart. His eyes flushed, and he roared. Jian Wushuang did not answer, but spit out 2 words gently. Sword comes. Suddenly, the thunder rolled, the wind and clouds changed color, and the Taro Excalibur suspended above the starry sky suddenly spun and flew towards the sword Wushuang in an instant. The next moment, the sword of Tai Luo was held in his hand by the sword unparalleled. A sense of brain-hearted connection surged in Jian Wushuang's mind. This is his innumerable days and nights, with the energy of the sword, the induction. Black Eagle, sacrifices my Taro sword today with your supreme blood. The sword held the Taro Excalibur without hands, the black hair flew, and a horror burst to the extreme, enough to make the Supreme bow his head with a low eyebrow, surging up. Immediately, a splendid radiance that shined through all ages spread out. Under this radiance, the figure of Jian Wushuang disappeared, and replaced by a blue sword standing on the top of the universe. He was holding a gourd jug in one hand, and a tailored Excalibur in one hand, deliberately chic, devouring the sun and the moon, and the royal sword riding the wind for 90,000 miles. He saw me with an eyebrow. Taro Sword Master. The Black Eagle supremely looked at the ghost image of the blue shirt sword god, but he could not help but soften his knees, and almost knelt down. The ghost of this blue shirt sword is arrogantly the Taro Swordsman, who has been crowned the supreme sword of all ages before the chaos ages. Cut. In Jian Wushuang's mouth, a sound sounded like the sound of ancient chaos. The next moment, I saw the Taro Excalibur, straight down towards the Black Hawk Supreme. No words can be used to describe the horror of this sword. Under this sword, this abandoned star field directly turned into chaos and nothingness. Countless stars exploded into the galaxy, and decomposed into the most primitive particle molecules. Million miles of starry sky are frozen. Do not. The Black Hawk is smashing, and a great terror between life and death rises in his heart. Under this crisis of life and death, he can't even feel the slightest resistance thought. Sword unparalleled. You want this seat to die, and this seat will not make you feel better. This seat has conveyed the secret of your possession, of the Taro Excalibur to the universe. Taro sword, you can't keep it. The Temple of Life can't protect you. Sword unparalleled. This seat takes a step first, waiting for you to accompany me. The Black Hawk stared at Jian Wushuang with a venomous expression. Ha! Tai Luo Excalibur, finally depressed. Jian Wushuang infused the sword energy of tens of thousands of years in the Tai Luo divine sword. Bursting out. Sword chi turned sky and sky, dominate the sun and the moon. Tens of millions of swords rushed out at the same time, covering the earth and covering the sun and the moon, just like the doomsday disaster. And the universe was in danger. Under these tens of millions of swords, the Black Eagle Supreme body began to annihilate at a very fast speed. Feng Jian 30,000 years, once the sword came out. After 3 breaths, the world became quiet. The Black Eagle Supreme disappeared, and even a trace of black powder was not left, and was directly obliterated into the most primitive nothingness. A generation of Supreme, that's it. The huge and terrifying sword pressure gradually dissipated, and the sword was swaying, and almost fell from the air. This sword just drained almost all the divine power from him. Although the Black Hawk Supreme was dead, Jian Wushuang's eyes did not have any pleasure, but he was gloomy to the extreme. The thing he was most worried about still happened. Just before the sword cut the Black Hawk Supreme, he felt very clearly that a wave of divine power was quickly passed from the Black Hawk Supreme. If he was not mistaken, it was a brief message before the Black Hawk's death. For today, you must hurry back to the Temple of Life. Jian Wu's eyes flashed, and his heart made a quick decision. He had to return to the Temple of Life, while the universe hadn't responded yet. Only in this way could there be room for crushing. Want to stop? Jian Wushuang threw a large sleeve and took out a space boat from the ring of Qian Kuan. The spacecraft rose in the wind and soon reached tens of thousands of feet, squeezing the void, exuding a dark, cold luster. Speaking of which, the spacecraft was obtained from him after killing the prison dragon, and compared to his previous spacecraft, the rank was much higher. The sword has no twin shape, and the whole person has entered the spacecraft. Bang! Immediately, the spacecraft issued a roar and roared, and instantly disappeared into this abandoned star field, directly breaking through the speed of light, concealing the breath, and rushing towards the Temple of Life. At the same time, in a star field in the middle of the Shrine of Life and the ancient sky, Bloodwave's supreme expression was gloomy, staring at the main owner of Diwu Temple, standing in front of him, with a light expression. Although he was angry, he did not dare to act half-heartedly. The master of Diwu Shrine is the ancient supreme of the same age as Gav Supreme, which is indeed not what he is now. Blood, I'll wait here patiently. Diwu Shrine Lord smiled slightly, counting the time, a little bit of calculation. Now Black Hawk Supreme should also slay the sword unparalleled. Call out. Just then, a rumor of Black Hawk Supreme sounded in his mind. Oh, is it resolved? The main eyelid of the main hall of Diwu Shrine was lifted, and the smile on his face became richer. But the next moment, the smile on his face suddenly freezes. Taro Excalibur? He whispered with a look of shock on his face. Huh, Taro Excalibur? Bloodwave Supreme noticed this scene, and her pupils shrank. The master of Diwu Temple didn't answer, but after taking a deep breath, he quickly pressed down the uproar in his heart, and turned to look at the direction of Shinkong Ancient Road. After a flash of his body, he disappeared in front of the Supreme Master of Blood. That's a sacred sword. He asked the supreme treasure of the Invincible Supreme. I'm afraid that there is change in Jian Wushuang. Bloodwave Supreme's eyes froze. A flash of thought flashed through his eyes, and chased towards the master of Diwu Temple. Chapter 43:10. The master of Diwu Shrine is extremely fast. He has never used a spacecraft, but it is much faster than the spacecraft. It is like a beam of light, and it has just passed away in the universe. Bloodwave Supreme followed closely behind him, and for some reason, the last word of the Torah Excalibur, of the main owner of the Diwu Temple, made him a little confused. Almost just when Jian Wushuang piloted the spacecraft, it was only an hour before he left, and the master of the Diwu Shrine appeared in the place where he fought with the Black Eagle Supreme. Diwu Shrine's main black feather closed his eyes and felt for a moment. Then his eyes opened sharply, his eyes flickered and said, "There is an aftermath of battle here. This towering swordsmanship should be a very magic sword. Taro's sword really is in the hands of Jian Wushuang." Not long after, Bloodwave Supreme arrived too. He felt the remaining aftermath of the battle here, and immediately noticed the breath of active sword power. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang is not dead. Bloodwave Supreme's heart was a little loose. As long as Jian Wushuang did not die, he could accept any other result. And there was a throbbing movement in Bloodwave Supreme's heart. Since Jian Wushuang hasn't died, then the dead must be the Black Hawk Supreme. Sword Extreme. What a feat! Hey you, it seems that my disciple is quite hard-hitting. The Supreme Black Eagle wants to kill my disciple, which is not enough. Bloodwave Supreme looked at the owner of Diwu Shrine, and said with a smile. His eyes were full of pride and pride. This is the blood of his blood, the one who brought him back with one hand. The master of Diwu Shrine heard a faint expression. And now he has no concern at all about the life and death of the Black Eagle Supreme. All he thinks about now is the Taro Excalibur. It can be said that the 4 characters of Tai Luo's Excalibur have drawn all his mind. It is a pity that the universe is too vast. Jian Wushuang is now like a fish that has penetrated into the sea, which has made him superb. After a short while, he can't figure out the position of Jian Wushuang. And as far as he knows, the Black Eagle Supreme has always been narrow-minded. And he must report that he died in the hand of Jian Wushuang. And he will try his best to retaliate against Jian Wushuang before dying. The news that Wushuang possesses the Tai Luo Excalibur tells him that he is alone. In fact, the situation was indeed as he expected. Almost at the same time, among the major forces in the entire universe, there were mortal rumors before the Black Hawk Supreme. The birth of the Taro Excalibur, held by the sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang relies on the Taro Excalibur, the sword cut supreme. As soon as the news came out, the whole universe was in a tumult. Thousands of people are trembling, and they are boiling. The Taro Excalibur is a treasure of the universe. At the time, the Taro Excalibur was revered, but with this Taro Excalibur, it was directly ranked among the invincible supremes of the universe. The universe surrendered, even if it was invincible supreme. More than one died in his hands. So, how can those supremes not be stingy? How not to be jealous? What's more, this sacred sword is still present in the sword without hands. For a while, no matter whether it was the mentality of being suspicious, the major forces have sent strong men out of the customs and went to the universe in search of the killing sword unparalleled. They knew that it was only when Jian Wushuang did not return to the Temple of Life that he had the best Taro sword. Once he had returned to the Temple of Life and wanted to get the Taro sword again, it was difficult. That abandoned star field, the master of Diwu Shrine, with a cloudy expression, looked up and saw the blood wave supreme, and there was a killing in his eyes. He knows that the relationship between Bloodwave Supreme and Jian Wushuang has always been better. Although there is no name for the master and apprentice between them, Jian Wushuang has always respected Bloodwave Supreme, and is definitely a decisive figure in Jian Wushuang's heart. He was thinking about whether to capture the Supreme of Blood, and then to go to the Temple of Life, and he would have to surrender the Taro Excalibur. Although Bloodwave Supreme is strong, he is not yet his opponent. But when he thought of sitting in the Supreme Palace of Life, he thought of it again. This old guy is much older than him. Although because of that battle, there has been no time left. But if he really hijacked the Bloodwave Supreme, it is hard to guarantee that the old guy will be mad and desperate for it. And at the same time, Bloodwave Supreme also received a message from the Temple of Life. Tai Luo Excalibur fell in the hands of the sword unparalleled. This makes the Bloodwave Supreme, and his face suddenly changes. Don't even think he knows how much a sensation this will cause in the universe. The Terra Excalibur is a cosmic weapon. It can be said that once any Supreme holds the Terra Excalibur, he can jump into the Supreme Divine Realm, except for the few kings standing on the top of the universe. Being one, for those Supremes, the temptation is immense. Some Supremes, especially some who are proficient in Kendo, will definitely find the sword unparalleled and win the Taro Excalibur. This sacred sword is invincible. Even if it is his blood, it cannot be protected. Even if Taro Supreme was in the same year, when he first got the Taro Excalibur, he was assassinated countlessly. But the Taro Supreme climate, at that time was already established, and he heard the adult at the Cosmopolitan event. Tao, the strength is even more advanced, only to kill the universe to surrender, with force to convince people. People dare not come back to fight the idea of the Taro sword in his hands. But Sword Wushuang, how far is it from Taro Supreme? Thinking of this, Bloodwave Supreme was impatient, and when he stepped down, he disappeared into this abandoned star domain. Today, the only way is to find Jian Wushuang as soon as possible and bring it back to the Temple of Life. The master of Diwu Shrine, seeing that the Supreme Master of Bloodwaves left, was not blocked, but the two-finger sacrifice, quickly calculated the position of Jian Wushuang. After a while, found it, the master of Diwu Shrine. His eyes flashed, and as soon as he stepped on it, he disappeared in place and swept away in one direction in the universe. In the universe, Jian Wushuang is driving a cosmic boat, hiding in the void, and quickly moving towards the Temple of Life. He did not dare to delay, or use the cosmic passage, because he was not sure whether anyone would be intercepted outside the cosmic passage. He could only drive the cosmic boat, constantly changing routes and being cautious. Be cautious, and quickly rush back to the Temple of Life. In fact, as expected by Jian Wushuang, almost every cosmic passage from the starry sky to the Temple of Life has long been waiting there. As long as Jian Wushuang came forward and greeted him, it was a storm of assault. However, Rao is so careful with Jian Wushuang. When Jian Wushuang rushed to halfway to the ancient road of life, he was still stopped. Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's life was suspended again. Chapter 43:11. In the vast universe, a cosmic ship shining with darkness and blackness stood quietly. In front of the spacecraft, the four were strong, with different appearances, and they were coming together, standing against their hands, and standing in front of the spacecraft. Sword unparalleled, stop, the old man is a rare gift for you. As long as you surrender the Tai Luo Excalibur, the old man can spare you a life. A gray-haired old man wearing a Zhou Tian nebula robe, slightly faint, said slightly, if there is a monk in the Seven Palaces Star Realm at this time, he will recognize that this old man is the owner of the Seven Palaces Realm, the Seven Palace Supreme, who has been closed for many years. 27 Palace Supremes had already closed their minds in the heart long ago, dozens of times before the Chaos Era. I did not expect that this time the Taro Excalibur was born. Even he was drawn out. Yes, the sword is unparalleled. If you surrender the Taro sword, this palace can protect your life without worry. Another old woman with a silver wire coiled up, and twisting a crutch with a faucet, opened her mouth. This old woman is the owner of Lianqin Island, and is also a supreme class. Give up the Taro Excalibur, I will spare you. Well, recognize the situation quickly and don't make unnecessary resistance. The other two Supremes, one with a gloomy ghostly appearance and the other with a solemn treasure, are the most famous Supremes in the universe. Wu Jianwushuang stood in the cosmic boat, looked at the four people through the black light mirror. His expression was somber. He was already careful and couldn't be more careful. The road to the Temple of Life was constantly winding and twisting, and sometimes even the other way around. However, he did not expect that this was still the case. And he was still stopped. Is it really necessary to hand over the Taro Excalibur? Jian Wushuang glanced down at the tailored Excalibur around his waist, and there was a touch of coldness in his eyes. I'm afraid that I really handed out the Taro Excalibur, and I still can't escape it. After all, this kind of enemies of treasure hunting is still such a cosmic weapon, and it's still the treasure in the hands of the most demon in the universe. If you have anxiety in your heart, you might as well cut off the roots to prevent future problems. And the reason why they are still hovering with the sword unparalleled, who wants to come is no one wants to be the first bird, offend the Temple of Life, so as not to be accounted for after the fall. But Jian Wushuang believes that this is only temporary. It won't be long before someone will shoot out the threat of the Life Palace, and this sacred sword, which is very important, they will naturally choose the latter. Su took a deep breath, and Jian Wushuang stepped down from the cosmic boat step by step, and his mind was already determined. Now he is holding a Taro Excalibur, but he doesn't have all of them. The four Supremes, as long as they dare to take the first shot, Jian Wushuang dared to abandon everything and fight to death with the Taro Excalibur to kill the first shot. Oh, can you give it up? Wu Qigong Supreme raised his eyelids and looked at Jian Wushuang, and spoke lightly. The other three Supremes are also smiling with skin and flirting, looking at the Tai Luo Divine Sword, which is obliquely exposed behind the sword's body, and there is an unshakable greedy glow in his eyes. Taro Excalibur, the cosmic weapon. If anyone can get the Taro Excalibur, whose strength can at least multiply. Sword unparalleled, come. Give Tara Excalibur to this seat. This seat will let you go. I was in front of the Tai Luo Divine Sword, forgiving these supreme ones, I couldn't help but swallow the saliva, and I was a bit sick. How? With a backhand draw, Jian Wushuang pulled out the tailored Excalibur that was lost behind him, but pointed his sword directly at the four Supremes, tilted his head and sneered. Sorry, Tailor Excalibur, I don't. Yes, if anyone wants to grab it, try it. Finished, Jian Wushuang's eyes surged in hunting war. Everyone in the world often says that if they do enter the Supreme Divine Realm, they will eventually be ants. The gap between the Supreme and the Master is just like the gods and mortals. Then today his sword is unparalleled. Jian Wushuang, are you threatening us? Immediately, the Seventh Palace Supreme Anger smiled, thinking that they were the grandest of the universe. And now they are threatened by an ultimate master? If you don't believe it, try it. Jian Wushuang looked at him calmly. You. When the Seventh Palace Supreme heard the words angry, he seemed to remember something. After a cold hum, he stopped talking. The dead body of the Black Eagle Supreme is not yet cool. And he really is not sure. Now that he is holding the Titan Excalibur sword unparalleled, will he be headed to death under the death? For a moment, the atmosphere fell into a weird stalemate. The four Supremes looked dull, and looked at the Taro Excalibur with no hands in the sword, full of greedy and hot eyes, and a deep fear. Finally, it was the dark-skinned man with a sullen smile. 3. If we don't take another shot and wait for others to come, we may not have our chance. The three Supreme Masters of the Seven Palaces heard the words, and their faces were all stunned. Yes, the whole universe is now hunting down Jian Wushuang. And no one knows when the Supreme will be there again. Immediately, the owner of the island of Lianqin Island, the old woman with curly hair and husky, said hoarsely. From the perspective of the palace, I and the four of them first joined forces to kill the kid. And then, as for the ownership of the Terra Excalibur, then choose the strongest of the four of us. The four Supreme Masters looked at each other, and quickly made a decision. First cut swordless. Jian Wushuang looked at this scene. His face was unmoved, but in his heart there was a meaning of death fighting. How about the four Supremes? The battle is up. The dark-skinned man in black was the first to sneer, and a nine-headed scimitar exuding a weird breath appeared in his hand. When he stepped on the foot, he was the first to kill the sword. The other three Supremes also practiced Taoism. I saw the Supreme Seventh Palace tearing his hands, and suddenly there were 7 fist-sized beads. These 7 beads were made by refining 7 planets. Each circle with 1 bead. No less than 1 planet exploded. Below the 7, it formed a battle, and its power was extremely high. And the old woman, under the footsteps on the sky are countless red lotuses. For Supremes, killing sword unparalleled at the same time. Kill! The cold sword flashed in Wu Jian's eyes, and the whole Buddhist divine power was poured into the Taro Excalibur. In a short time, a horrible sharp destruction of destruction, centered on Jian Wushuang, skyrocketed. The sword has no hands in the sword, and the eye on the hilt of the sword is opened. Countless bloodshots permeated this breath. It is really a very magic sword. The four great masters felt that this towering atmosphere was devastating. All of them were shaking, their hairs were standing upright. In their eyes, the figure of Jian Wushuang was blurred, and replaced by the drunken figure of Drunken World, and the sword riding by the wind. That's Taro Supreme. Cut! A cold voice came out. Jian Wushuang holding the Taro Excalibur, chopping fiercely towards the four Supremes. A wave of dark golden swords that radiated the everlasting sun burst out along the Tai Luo Excalibur, as if it were a heaven and a catastrophe, and politely ran towards the four Supremes. The 24 greatest looked at the sword, their pupils shrank sharply, and the old woman said in a deep voice, Everyone, Jian Wushuang has already had the power to slay the Supreme with the Tai Luo divine sword. I must wait for the enemy to be taken seriously, and follow in the footsteps of the Black Hawk Supreme. Chapter 43:12. When Jian Wushuang broke through the ultimate dominance, in fact, his strength was already infinitely close to the Supreme. Otherwise, he would not have made the Black Hawk almost dead by relying on the sword of Breaking Dawn. Now he is holding the Taro Excalibur, And he has no fear. And has more than 10 times his strength? It can be said that the combat power of the sword Wushuang holding the Taro Excalibur and the sword Wushuang without the Terra Excalibur is very different. When the sword Wushuang was cut off, the world suddenly shouted, the sky changed color, and the sun and the moon were deprived of all glory. Fortune Zhengxiushou, yin and yang cut off. Swordless eyes stared at the seventh palace supreme. He could feel that the strongest of these four supremes was the seventh palace supreme. And he used the Taro Excalibur. Only one sword power. One sword after that. His whole body will be drained. If he wants to live, he can only ask for this sword to kill the seventh supreme, deter the other three supremes, and then quickly take the magic medicine to restore his power. Go to death. Yan Jian Wushuang's teeth clattered and roared, and Tai Luo's Excalibur fell fiercely towards the seventh palace supreme. Ha! This sword first shattered the petals of the red lotus with the pressure of the sword, and then the sharp swordman directly pushed the old lady, the black man, and the treasured majestic man back, and finally moved towards the seventh palace supreme beheaded. Ha! The 7 fist-sized beads in the hands of the seventh palace supreme collided with the Taro Excalibur. A gigantic sword exploded from the Taro Excalibur, turning into Changhong and directing the sky. Under the sword consciousness, the 7 trembled tens of thousands of times instantly, and also quickly released the power of the stars. Crackling. Immediately, a terrifying scene took place. The 7 beads made of stars uttered a wailing sound, and cracks appeared on the bead body. In the end, the cracks became more and finally burst. Ha! The first star beads burst. Ha! The second. The third. The fourth. 7 star beads. None of them were spared. All were crushed by the Tai Luo Excalibur. One sword destroys 7 stars. What? There was a shock on the face of the Supreme Master Qiushi Palace. You should know that each of these 7 star beads is based on a planet, and then it is made of endless cold iron. On the rank of the grade, it has reached the limit of the treasure of the laws of the universe. Enough to rival the Supreme Soldier, but it is such a powerful 7 star beads that have been destroyed by the sword of Tai Luo Excalibur. The power of the Taro Excalibur is rare. The Qiqiong Supreme took a breath, then raised his head to look at the Tai Luo Excalibur, who continued to press on him. His face dignified to the extreme, and he whispered, "Mystery Fengtian." The words of the symbol fell, and beside him, countless galaxies emerged beside him. This galaxy, like a dragon, seemed to have aura, rolled up and intertwined, forming a large net, and heading towards Tai Luo Dijian. He is a generation of supreme masters, and he has a lot of mysterious skills in his hands. This heavenly spell is a powerful defense trick that can disintegrate the supreme strike. The sword is unparalleled, with a cold flash in his eyes, cold and cold. Talented, amazing life. Suddenly, time and space seemed to stagnate, and a deterrent realm that overwhelmed the peoples came suddenly. This realm is invisible, but within this realm, the Supreme's action suddenly slows down, and it can't help but have a feeling of bowing to the sword. This is the look and suppression of lower life from higher life. There is no realm at all. The reason why the Black Eagle Supreme is so difficult is that the extermination spear in his hand can greatly restrain the weakening of Jian Wushuang as a special life advantage, but the 7th Palace Supreme does not. Ha! The Tai Luo Excalibur fell into the net, but the scene that shocked the 7th Palace Supreme happened. The Feng Tianluo net that was still deadlocked by 1 or 2. With the sword Wushuang's life shock coming, the power was suddenly reduced by a large arc, and finally it was actually split on both sides by Tai Luo's Excalibur, breaking open without hindrance, and finally split on his body. Do not! A squeak came, and the supreme goddess of the 7th palace faced the sharp edge of the Tai Luo divine sword. He could not be resisted at all, and was beheaded and turned into fly ash. 7 Palace Supreme die. After the Supreme Black Hawk, Jian Wushuang held the Taro Excalibur and cut the Supreme. Suddenly, the 3 people on the island of Lianxin Island, who had rushed towards Jian Wushuang, all stopped abruptly and looked at Jian Wushuang unbelievably. How can this and this be so? The old woman's fingers tremblingly pointed at Jian Wushuang, and her expression on the face was extremely furious. She wanted to use one word to describe Jian Wushuang, but she couldn't think of it. Jian Wushuang forcibly suppressed the severe pain from the body and looked coldly at the remaining three Supremes. Originally, he beheaded the Black Eagle Supreme and drained all of his divine power. Even in the past few days, he had not completely recovered. Now he forcibly killed the 7th Palace Supreme. The body has already been overdrawn and reached the oil exhaust lamp at the end of the dry, strong crossbow. I am a Taurus sword, don't you want to either? Then come and get it. Jian Wushuang stared coldly at the three Supremes, speaking indifferently. When the three of them heard the words, they were all eyes closed and their eyes were cold and cold. Sword unparalleled. You can't frighten this seat. This seat doesn't believe it. You are an ultimate master who can forcibly trigger the Taro Excalibur several times. Now I'm afraid it will be difficult to stand. The gloomy black man was supreme, staring at Jian Wushuang tightly, his lips aroused a whisper. You can try it then. Jian Wushuang's cold eyes also shot straight at the Supreme Black, with half concealment in his eyes. You! Suddenly, the black clothes were extremely angry, and an unknown fire ignited. He has a 90% certainty, and is sure that Jian Wushuang is now in a bluff, but he dare not bet. If the sword is unparalleled, he can urge the Taro sword again, even if there is only one blow. That's not what he can bear. Lingheng. The Supreme in black no longer speaks, and his expression is cloudy and uncertain. Jian Wushuang saw this. His heart was slightly relieved, and quickly recovered his divine power. If someone is present at this time, you will find a weird scene. The three Supreme Masters were hesitant to be forced to face a unparalleled sword that ultimately dominates the realm, their eyes full of fear. I was in this deadlocked atmosphere. A faint voice sounded again from the void. Found it. The next moment, he saw a majestic middle-aged man wearing a purple gold crown and embroidered with flowers, birds, beasts and insects, walking from a distance. When he raised his feet, he was still on the edge of Skyrim, but it was just a small black spot. But when he stepped down, his figure appeared in front of the sword without double sides. Lord of Diwu Temple, come. His expression was indifferent. He didn't even look at the three former Supreme Masters of the Lotus Island, etc., and stared straight at the Terra Excalibur in the sword without hands. After staring for about 3 minutes, his eyes slightly turned and fell on the sword again. Wushuang. Ha! Suddenly, Jian Wu's body trembled, and a horror surged on his face. This person has only one gaze, and the pressure on him is even more terrifying than that of the four Supremes. Who is he? Chapter 43:13. Ha! This vision of the Master of Diwu Temple seemed to come through the floods of the universe and fell on Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang actually felt that in this sight, the gods were almost collapsed and his heart was cold. Who is this person? How could I be so powerful? Almost instantaneously, Jian Wushuang determined in his heart that even if he was holding the Taro Excalibur, he would be far from his opponent. You are the sword unparalleled. The master of the Diwu Temple shook the sword Wushuang indifferently. This I seemed to see through the sword Wushuang, and his eyes were slightly different. The origin of the 4th layer of Kendo, a perfect level of special life, plus a Taro Excalibur, these talent opportunities, just a little growth, will pose a fatal threat to my Diwu Temple. Just kill him. It is too wasteful. It is better to bring him back, to extract the life level, to refine the soul. He shook his head, and the master of the Diwu Temple said, Swords are unparalleled, take a trip with this seat. After finishing speaking, the master of Diwu Shrine extended his hand and gently grasped with 5 fingers. In an instant, the void seemed to form an invisible big hand, lifting the sword unparalleled. And the other 3 Supreme Masters, already long after the master of the Diwu Temple arrived, they shrank aside, trembling like a chill. He was at the moment when the master of Diwu Shrine lifted his sword and was about to leave. A shocking roar suddenly exploded in the sky. Where is this seat? Who dares to take away sword unparalleled? Ha! A blood-colored lightning burst from a distance. This scarlet lightning was almost at the extreme, and it took almost just a moment to fall in front of Jian Wushuang, and with a big wave of his hand, he directly crushed the big hand of the master of Diwu Temple. For this person, it is truly a blood wave that comes out of nowhere at all costs. Blood wave supreme. Wu Jinsho looked at the back of Wei and who was standing in front of him. He was moved for a while, and couldn't help but shout softly. Blood wave supreme heard the words, turned his head and looked at Jian Wushuang. He glanced up and down at Jian Wushuang, feeling that Jian Wushuang's body was exhausted, and his eyes could not help but pour out endless regrets. It's too late to make you suffer. Wu Jianshuang heard the words and forced a smile on him, saying, It's not too late, it's me, it's trouble for you. Sun Xuebwa Supreme also smiled back, stretched out his hands, and rubbed the sword of Wushuang's hair, like the most kind elders, and spoiled the most beloved younger ones. His eyes were full of appreciation and comfort. What trouble is not trouble? When this seat took you back to the Temple of Life, I promised you that you entered my Temple of Life, and this seat protects you forever. Little one, leave the rest to me. After that, Supreme Bloody took a deep breath, turned abruptly, and looked coldly towards the main lord of the Diwu Temple, and the three Supremes, Morihan said. This seat is here. If you want to take away the sword, please first step on this seat. A terrifying atmosphere, enough to make chaos boil and shatter the horror, rising from the Bloodwave Supreme body. Under this breath, the three Supremes are simply frightened quails, their legs trembling for a while. Good. The old woman's face changed dramatically. Only the master of Diwu Shrine, undifferentiated, looked at Bloodwave Supreme indifferently, and said, Bloodwave, it's up to you, and you can't protect Jian Wushuang. Sun Xuebwa Supreme heard a cold hum. His cold warfare was captured in his eyes, and he said, You can't protect yourself, it's not you who cares, the first battle is. Seeing this, the main hall of Diwu Shrine sighed. Blood, this seat wanted to spare you life at the beginning, to stay with you for a few more days. Since you have to kill yourself, let's bury it with Jian Wushuang. After he finished speaking, he tore his hands apart and took out a 3-foot-long destroying spear directly from the void. This extermination spear is similar to the extinction spear in the hand of the Blackhawk Supreme, but it is completely different, because this extermination spear is too powerful and too much, and the destruction of the breath is not as good as Tai Luo. The Excalibur is too weak, and the heart of this extermination spear seems to be beating. Seeing the Blood Wave Supreme, the heart couldn't help it. Blood, come on. Let me see if you have improved over the years. The master of the Diwu Temple shook his head and waved his right hand gently. For a while, the exterminating spear stabbed towards the Supreme Blood Wave. This thorn seems to be ordinary and contains no power. It seems that any ultimate master can take it, but the blood of the Supreme is dignified to the extreme. Broken. Blood Wave 2-finger seal, drink a cold drink. Suddenly, there were 3 pillars of heavenly blood behind him. This pillar of blood was like a tornado of 3 heavens and earth, and the power was terrifying. The 3 pillars of heavenly blood have not yet exhibited mighty power. Huge coercion has spread and swept away, and the void collapses at the same time. Rewind. The faces of the 3 Lotus Island masters changed greatly, and they were also in the state of supremacy, but under this coercion, they actually felt as small as the ants. He is a sword unparalleled, and under the special care of the Supreme Blood Wave, he doesn't feel any pressure. Ha! A shocking sound came. Suddenly, the seemingly stabbing extermination spear collided with the 3 pillars of the blood of the heavens, and the terror power that was difficult to describe in words broke out. As the universe is plunged into a calamity, a mighty power that destroys the world rises, and just howling wind hangs under the collision is enough to tear any ultimate master. There was a medium star field around them, but it was only scratched by the aftermath of these 2 collisions, and the entire star field burst directly. This is exactly the battle between God and God. A huge shockwave shock spreads out brilliant. Everybody closed their eyes subconsciously. The same is true for Jian Wushuang. Under the confrontation between the Supreme Master of the Blood and the Lord of the Diwu Temple, he only felt that he was so small, like a mortal ant, looking up at the heaven-going who was standing for 9 days. Even holding the Taro Excalibur is a far-reaching realm. After the shock wave dissipated, it was not until half a moment later that everyone opened their eyes slowly. Qi Jian Wushuang hurriedly looked towards the Bloodwave Supreme, and saw that the sleeves of Bloodwave Supreme's right hand were all cracked, and his face was pale. Bloodwave Supreme. Immediately, Jian Wushuang couldn't help it anymore, roared loudly, his eyes were flushed. This seat. Anyway. Sun Xuebua Extreme reached out his hand, and posed it quite difficult, signaling that nothing was going on. Bloodwave, it seems that you are a lot stronger than the last war. However, the main owner of Diwu Shrine shrank a little and said, "Don't look at him," as if it was an understatement blow. In fact, just now the blow was extremely dangerous, hiding his 80% strength as the Invincible Supreme, and the ordinary Top Supreme could not be reached at all. Bloodwave Supreme forcibly suppressed the boiling burning force in the god body, raised his head to look at the main hall of Diwu Shrine, and took a deep breath. Kuroa, talk nonsense. No matter what today, this seat will accompany you to the end. Chapter 43:14. Blood, you're cutting your way. The master of Diwu Temple shook his head, and then a cruel smile came to his face. That being the case, Blood, your deity satisfies you. The words fell, and the spear of the gods condensed their power again. This time, a horrible breath surged, and at the tip of the spear of the gods, a cold red rim was lit, as if to pierce the sky into a cave. A variety of rules have evolved, and they are entangled in the spear of extermination. At this moment, even the magnetic field of the universe is changed and driven, as if it is about to emerge from the universe. The battle between supremes is a collision between rules. Extreme blood, Tai Luo Excalibur, I gave it to him. Jian Wushuang saw this, clenched his fists tightly and said, he knows that it is possible that under this blow, Bloodwave Supreme is in danger of falling. He asked himself since he joined the Temple of Life. He has always been the Bloodwave Supreme, to continue to support and protect himself. And what has he brought to Bloodwave Supreme? He has owed too much to Bloodwave Supreme, and must never let Bloodwave Supreme escape his life, because of the Tai Luo Divine Sword. Bloodwave Supreme heard the words, turned around and stretched out his hands, and pressed down Jian Wushuang's shoulders vigorously, then shook his head, and said with a serious expression, Sword Wushuang, Tai Luo Excalibur is your chance. It is your dependence on breaking the Supreme, and standing on top of the universe in the future. And you must not hand it over easily. After he finished speaking, Supreme Blood continued to speak in a deep voice. Sword unparalleled, believe this seat. As long as this seat is still a moment, no one in this world can bully you. Wu Jianshuang heard the words and wanted to say something more. Bloodwave Supreme had turned around. Bring it on. Sun Zuibo's supreme gaze stared coldly at the master of Diwu Temple. Qi Jian Wushuang looked at the back of Bloodwave Supreme Weiyan. For the first time, he felt that he was so weak, and hated why his strength was not stronger. Ha! At this moment in the starry sky, a few ons came again. Ha ha ha, Taro Excalibur, finally let the old man find it. Kuroba, do you want to swallow Taro's sword alone? Boot, quickly hand over the Taro Excalibur. I saw 3 magpies falling and turned into 3 supreme figures. Extreme South China Sea. Wuji Extreme. Deputy Master of the Blood Temple. The host of the Lotus Island was exclaimed. 3 Supremes strike again. These 3 are all long-established veterans of the universe. They have suppressed the invincible in the universe. Wuji Extreme is the top power in the Supreme, far from their ordinary Supremes. Seeing these 3 men coming, even the master of Diwu Shrine, his pupils shrank. Bloodwave Supreme is a heart sinking to the bottom of the valley. The Supreme Master who has come to the audience has reached as many as 7. Among them, the Master of Diwu Shrine is invincible and supreme, and there must be a Supreme Master. Come here. I'm afraid I can't be good today. Sun Xiebor raised his head and looked towards the distant void, and that direction was the direction of the Temple of Life. Today the only thing that can save them is the Temple of Life, but he has already been circulated to the Temple of Life. He spit out a stale gas. Bloodwave Supreme turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang and laughed. Little guy, if we fall here today, are you afraid? Wu Jianwushuang heard the words. His eyes swept across the face of the seventh Supreme, and his heart rose with a mighty pride, and he laughed and said, however, what is the fear? With the procrastination of Bloodwave Supreme, his whole Bodhist divine power has been restored by more than half, enough to perform the Taro Excalibur again. Even if he is dead today, he will drag another supreme funeral. Ha ha ha, what a fear it is. Jian Wushuang. Then the two of us will fight together today, stir him upside down, fight him to die. Sun Xiebo waved his palm and laughed. A spirit of grandeur burst into the air. He has been in the blood for tens of millions of years. When was there any word of fear in his life? As Jian Wushuang said, how can I be afraid of death? And the three new Supremes had already set their eyes greedily on the Taro Excalibur, with no hands in the sword. Chen Zhe changed, kill these two people first, and get the Taro Excalibur. Yes, less night-long dreams, kill these two first. The boy named Jian Wushuang, your ultimate master, can provoke our 7 Supreme Masters to kill. Even death is enough to be proud. The 7th Supreme Master has spoken eagerly. The main hall of Diwu Shrine saw a cold hum. Since some people can shoot together to kill the Bloodwave Supreme and others, he is indispensable. Anyway, he is confident. With his strength, this Taro sword will eventually fall into his hands. Kill. The main hall of the Deputy Hall of the Blood Temple of Heaven opened coldly, stepping on one foot, and looted towards the Supreme of Blood and Supreme Master Sword. The other 6 are supreme, and their bodies are also violent. In the blink of an eye, the 7 Supremes, meanwhile slaying Swordsman and Bloodwave. The mighty power of horror is like destroying the world and boiling the world. The violent winds directly stirred up numerous space storms. Kill. Bloodwave Supreme saw this. Morihan's murderous flashes in his eyes, and the supreme divine power surged from his body, turning the surroundings directly into a tumbling blood pool. Kill. Wu Jian's eyebrows were cold, but he raised the Tai Luo divine sword, and the Huang Jianwei spread. In the hearts of the two of them, the battle against this one was already in the heart of death. Ha! I was at this moment, the moment of life and death. Take a huge sharp axe light, and slash fiercely from a distance. I, the supreme axe is here, who dared to hurt my life shrine. With it there is also a terrifying roar. A gigantic giant striding from a distance. He is shrouded in the endless chaos of immortality holding a giant axe. In front of him, the sun is like a projectile. Xinghe is like a bathtub. The stars can be removed by raising your hands. And you can step on the feet, destroy the earth. Extreme axe, here it is. Soon it was the second roar. I, the God of Heaven is here. Who dares to hurt my life in the shrine? In the other direction, a middle-aged man with a naked upper body and sharp eyes like a hawk, bends his bow and arrow, releases the arrow string, and a lightning-like godhead blasts out. This arrow instantly cut through the sky, pulling a mighty, long wave of white waves in the universe, directly blasting a planet that was blocked in the middle, once again obliquely destroying the power of heaven and earth, and continued to shoot. I, White Tiger Supreme is here. Who dares to hurt my life shrine? The third roar sounded. A star-sized sharp golden white tiger stepped out of the void, screaming in the sky. The sound of terror was deafening, and a mass of murderous gas condensed overwhelmingly, making everything lonely and the people shaking. On this huge white tiger, a middle man in a ferret and a white forehead held a machete and sang a cold drink. The white tiger under his seat opened his mouth and shouted a silence. Light out. In the end, it was an old and indifferent voice, as if through the flood of the universe. At the same time it sounded in everyone's heart. I, Supreme is here. Who dares to hurt my life shrine? Chapter 43:15. I, Supreme is here. Who dares to hurt me in the Temple of Life? When this indifferent old voice sounded, suddenly, the 7 Supreme Masters, including the Master of the Diwu Shrine, all changed their faces. The 5 Chief Supreme Masters of the Shrine of Life have come together. Gaifu is here. The main eyes of the main hall of Diwu Temple shone wildly. What now and now? Among these 7 people, the weakest Lianqin Island owner is his lips trembling. The 5 chief supreme masters of the life shrine, but the top supreme masters that have been tempered from numerous battles after experiencing strong winds and waves. Especially Gawaf, they are so ancient that they do not know their origins. Even the most extreme ones in the universe are extremely jealous of Gawaf. Blood wait a long time. The giant axe came in great strides. As the same Chaos Immortal King came from ancient times, each step was a tremor of the universe, crushing countless void fragments. Behind him, holding the arrow of the god, as if the heavenly of the arrow came after him, his eyes were sharp like a hawk. I used to, when the universe was still in chaos, during the battle of the nation, he shot 9 Jinwu in succession with 9 arrows in succession. Although he has not scored dozens of chaos ages, no one will doubt his strength. Blood ill wait. Coming late. The white tiger supreme jumped out, and the sharp golden white tiger beneath him actually had twin pupils. Each step of the foot ignited black flame footprints out of thin air. Between the light changes, looking at the 7 supremes, more it's like trying to choose someone and eating it, letting the 7 supremes chill everywhere. They all came together, standing next to the supreme blood wave. And the majestic power rose, as if to crush all eternity and shake for 9 days and 10 places. You guys. Blood wave supreme, with a complex expression, a little complex, and wanted to say something, and finally all the words turned into a sound. It is good. Seeing this, the master of Diwu Temple suddenly became gloomy to the extreme, but he did not care about the 4 supremes, but looked away from the void. I was there. An old man with an old face, covered with age spots, and full of decay, was walking step by step. He was expressionless, as if he were the most ordinary old man. But when he took each step, he came directly across the time and space of chaos. Gufu Supreme, the strongest person in the Palace of Life, except for the owner, who has long disappeared. Hit him. It is the pillar of life of the Palace of Life. Even if the owner of the Palace of Life disappears, as long as he is still sitting in the Palace of Life, then the Palace of Life is the most powerful force in the universe. Gaifu, a sword invincible, even lead you out? The master of Diwu Temple shyly said slowly. He Gaofu Supreme expressionless, raised his eyelid and glanced at him, said indifferently, Kuroba, in recent years, your Diwu Temple has been a bit excessive. Excessive? The lord of the Diwu Temple sneered, and his eyes sneered. Gaifu, if this seed is correct, the injuries you left over from that war should not have been okay? Let me guess now how many more shots? 2. Or 3. He never heard a word, but just silently uttered a word. Kill. All of a sudden, the White Tiger Supreme, the Heavenly Supreme, the Giant Axe Supreme, and the Bloodwave Supreme were all in rush. A monstrous war will erupt from the 4. They looked at the Supreme 7, without any timidity, but rather extremely relaxed and heroic. Blood, 4 of us, how long haven't we fought side by side? Great Axe laughed supremely. Sun Shuebwa Supreme smiled slightly and replied, Count the time. Since that war, there are nearly hundreds of chaos periods. Su Tianzuan said nothing, raised his bow in his hand, and a scarlet arrow condensed on his bowstring. And that White Tiger Supreme is the first to head towards the eerie Black Supreme, who intercepted Jian Wushuang at the beginning, and smashed away with Baoxiang Solemn Man. Blood Nature Giant Axe, look at it, these ants will be solved by me. Roar. A huge tiger howl came out, deterring all directions. The white tiger was so proud and supreme, and an air of killing and fighting shook the universe. White Tiger, the main palm to kill the felling, and White Tiger Supreme, is the most powerful one out of the endless killing. Ha ha ha, I haven't moved my bones for a long time, leave them to me. The giant axe laughed loudly. The giant axe in his hand broke the ground and cut out a shocking axe light. This axe light was hundreds of thousands of feet long. He smashed a galaxy directly, and then headed towards the strongest person, except the main owner of the Diwu Temple. Promise Extreme cuts fiercely. Sun Shuebwa looked at this scene with a smile on his face, as if he had crossed the space and time of the universe. And when the world-famous battle of that year, when they fought side by side, the whole Buddhist blood was boiling. He looked back at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Jian Wushuang, look at it, how old guys like us can you? Ha! His words fell, and he stepped hard, directly turning into a pillar of heavenly blood, carrying a mighty might, and rushing towards the deputy chief of the Temple of Blood, and the supreme master of the South China Sea. Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly. At this moment, he only felt a blood boiling in his chest. The power of Shizongmen, he felt it for the first time. Ha! At this moment, the hundreds of thousands of miles of starry sky nearby were all roared, as if they were caught in a sea of chaos and anger, and the world was mourning. Countless ways of supreme divine magic rise to the sky. The brilliance is spectacular, as if it opened a magnificent epic. Howling, howling. The sharp gold and white tiger the size of a planet opened his mouth and roared, and the sound waves that destroyed the earth shot out from his mouth, blasting the starry sky out of countless giant pits. Too garbage dared to come to the idea of my life shrine? The white tiger supreme sneered with one enemy and two, and at the same time faced the solemn man in the black clothing supreme, and Baoxiang who first intercepted the sword unparalleled sword. Not only did he lose the slightest bit of wind, but he showed the trend of overbearing and crushing, like the king in charge of killing. World. The sharp gold and white tiger was photographed with one palm, and the various techniques directly blasted by the two were smashed, and the black one was shot tens of thousands. On the other side, the giant axe battles the extremes of the extreme. Both of them are the strongest in the top. Under the confrontation, a sudden shock broke out. Ha! The whole starry sky shook for a while, and the giant axe was as high as 10,000 meters long, as if transformed into a great ancient god. The left eye is the moon, the right eye is the sun, and the veins protruding from the whole body are towering mountains. Every time he cut down the giant axe in his hand, he carried the power of destroying the earth and destroying the earth, shattering the endless blast of the supreme extreme, and trembling in shape. Come, kill me! The giant axe shouted loudly, and the battle was crazy, and the presence of the supreme was a chill. That promise of extreme promise is even more ugly, and there is a clear fear in his eyes. Chapter 43:16 I'm here. Blood wave, you're cutting off your own path. The hall master of the great Cosmos Temple shook his head, and a cruel smile appeared on his face. Since that's the case, it'll satisfy you, blood wave. As soon as he said that, the god-killing spear gathered its power again. This time a terrifying aura surged. At the tip of the god-killing spear, there was a cold red light, as if it was going to pierce a hole in the sky. All kinds of rules evolved and settled on the god-killing spear. At this moment, even the magnetic field of the universe was changed and triggered, as if the great Tao of the universe was about to emerge. A battle between supreme beings was a clash of laws. Supreme blood wave, it'll just give him the tarot divine sword. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang clenched his fists tightly and said, he knew that the ruler blood wave was in danger of dying from this attack. He asked himself, ever since I joined the Divine Life Palace, it has always been the ruler blood wave who has constantly supported and protected me. What have I brought to the ruler blood wave? He had already owed the ruler blood wave far too much. He couldn't let the ruler blood wave risk his life, for the sake of the Zenith sword. When the blood wave supreme heard this, he turned around and stretched out his hand to press down on Jian Wushuang's shoulder. Then he shook his head and said with a serious expression, Jian Wushuang, the tarot divine sword is your opportunity. It's also the thing you can rely on to break through to the supreme level and stand at the peak of the universe. You can't hand it over so easily. After saying this, the ruler blood wave continued in a deep voice. Jian Wushuang, believe in me. As long as I'm still alive, no one in this world can bully you. Jian Wushuang wanted to say something, but the blood wave master had already turned around. Come on. The blood wave supreme glared coldly at the hall master of Cosmos Temple. Jian Wushuang looked at the back of the blood wave master. For the first time, he felt so weak and hated himself for not being stronger. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At this moment, A few more rays of light appeared in the starry sky. Ha ha ha, I finally found the Tarot Divine Sword. Hey you! Don't tell me you want to keep the Tarot Divine Sword for yourself? That brat, quickly hand over the Tarot Divine Sword. 3 rays of light descended and turned into 3 supreme figures. The Supreme Being of the Southern Sea, Supreme Wuji, the Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall. The Island Master of Lotus Heart Island cried out in alarm. The 3 great rulers were attacking again. The 3 of them were all well-known Supreme Masters in the universe. They were all invincible in the universe. Limitless Supreme was a top master among the Supreme Masters, and ordinary Supreme Masters like them could not compare to him. Even the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was shocked when he saw the 3 of them. The Blood Wave Supreme's heart sank to the bottom. There were already 7 Supremes present, and the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was an invincible Supreme. There must be more Supremes rushing over from afar. I'm afraid we won't be able to settle this peacefully today. The ruler Blood Wave raised his head and looked into the distance. He was looking in the direction of the Divine Life Palace. The only thing that could save them now was the Divine Life Palace. He had already sent a message to the Divine Life Palace. Exhaling a mouthful of turbid air, the Blood Wave Supreme turned to look at Jian Wushuang and said with a smile, "Little fellow, if we were to die here today, would you be afraid?" Hearing this, Jian Wushuang's eyes swept across the 7 great masters' faces. He suddenly felt a sense of pride and laughed. It's just death, what's there to fear? Thanks to the ruler Blood Wave's delay, he had already recovered more than half of his divine power. Enough for him to use the Tarot Divine Sword again. Even if he had to die today, he would drag another supreme martial artist down with him. Ha ha ha, what fear? Jian Wushuang, let's join forces and fight together. We'll turn the world upside down and fight to the death. The ruler Blood Wave clapped his hands and laughed heartily as a heroic aura soared into the sky. His blood waves had swept across the universe for tens of millions of years. When had he ever been afraid? It was just as Jian Wushuang had said. However, what was there to fear about death? As for the 3 new supreme martial artists, they had already cast their greedy eyes on the Tarot Divine Sword in Jian Wushuang's hand. Things might change if we delay. Let's kill these 2 first and get the Tarot Divine Sword. He thought. That's right, to prevent any accidents. Let's kill these 2 first. Jian Wushuang, you're just an ultimate ruler. You should be proud that you're being hunted down by the 7 of us, even if you die. The 7 great supremes spoke one after another, eager to make a move. The Hall Master of Cosmos Temple snorted coldly. Since there were people who could work together to kill the Supreme Blood Wave, and the others, he naturally could not do so. After all, he was confident that with his strength, the Tarot Divine Sword would eventually fall into his hands. Kill! The Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall said coldly, as he took a step forward and charged toward the Blood Wave Supreme and Jian Wushuang. The other 6 supreme martial artists also charged forward. In the blink of an eye, the 7 supreme masters killed Jian Wushuang and Blood Wave at the same time. The enormous and terrifying power seemed to be able to destroy the world, causing the heavens and earth to boil. The violent wind stirred up countless spatial storms. Kill! Upon seeing this, a cold killing intent flashed across Supreme Blood Wave's eyes. The supreme divine power in his body surged and turned the surrounding area into a churning blood pool. Kill! Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold. He raised the Tarot Divine Sword, and a brilliant sword power spread out. The 2 of them were already prepared to die in this battle. Bang! At this moment of life and death, a huge and sharp axe light suddenly hacked down from the distance. I, Supreme Giant Axe, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my Divine Life Palace? Along with it, there was an earth-shaking roar. A 10 million feet tall rough giant strode over from the distance. He was shrouded in endless chaotic immortal radiance, and held a giant axe that could split the sky and earth. In front of him, the sun was like a bullet, and the river of stars was like a bathtub. He could pluck the stars with the rays of his hand, and destroy the earth with a step. Supreme Being Giant Axe had arrived. Immediately after, a second roar came. I, Ruler Heavenly Dipper, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my Divine Life Palace? In another direction, a topless middle-aged man with sharp eyes pulled the bowstring and released an arrow. A godly arrow shot out like a lightning bolt. The arrow instantly cut through the sky, leaving a 10,000 feet long white wave in the universe. It directly blew up a planet in its way, and continued to shoot forward with destructive power. I, the White Tiger ruler, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? A third roar rang out. A star-sized sharp metal white tiger stepped out of the void and roared into the heavens. Terrifying shockwaves were deafening, and a tangible killing intent covered the world, causing all things to fall silent and all races to tremble. On the back of this huge white tiger, there was a burly man in the middle. He was wearing a ferret robe and a white forehead pad. He was holding a scimitar. As he shouted coldly, the white tiger under him opened its mouth and roared out a destructive light wave. Finally, an old and indifferent voice sounded in everyone's mind, as if it had traveled through the universe. I, Supreme Master Gaifu, am here. Who dares to hurt the people of my divine life palace? Chapter 43:17. A few days later, news about the Shrine of Life and the Battle of the Seven Supremes spread, as if a bomb had been dropped on a calm lake, completely exploding in the universe and detonating the entire universe. The news was that the river bank was collapsing and flooding at an extremely fast speed. It spread throughout the universe and swept the world. Suddenly, the universe was boiling, and peoples were shocked. Discussions about this battle can be heard in almost any corner of the universe, and in any population. The 5 Chief Supremes of Life Shrine were born together, and they battled the 7 Supremes, showing invincibility. Gafresh shot, and defeated the Master of Diwu Temple with one finger. The Supreme. Within a day, the 7 Supremes fell, rare in ancient times. The universe was full of discussions about this battle. Only then did they realize that the Life Shrine, which had been silent for many years, was so scary when they really surfaced. Originally, the last time the Great Axe and Bloodwave Supreme, for the purpose of killing the swordless temple on the Sword Warrior, has made countless people marvel at the strength of the Temple of Life. The Supreme killed Taishu Temple was worthless to mention. In the universe, there has been so much peace for too long. Therefore, the sensation caused by this battle is almost no ancients and no comers. Everyone was discussing the strength of the Life Shrine, how much more powerful it is, how powerful it is, and how terrible it has been. Of course, the most discussed naturally is the protagonist of this battle, Jian Wushuang. Sword Cut 2 Supreme. Ancient and modern. Jian Wushuang takes the body of the master and slaughters the supreme divine realm. Jian Wushuang's battle is enough to record entering history, shocking ancient times. I dare to say that as long as Jian Wushuang does not fall, when he is promoted to the realm of honor, the universe will become an era belonging to Jian Wushuang. Countless people are crazy about it, and they regard Jian Wushuang as the future master of the universe. Sword Unparalleled has become the storm center of the entire universe. However, these discussions are still circulating among those who control the realm in the universe. The true power in the universe, the Supremes, is silent. Taishu Temple. The new God Emperor's Bingxian smashed the armrest of the seat with a palm, and his face was extremely blue. He did not expect that he was regarded as an ant, and sent the prisoner dragon to the starry ancient road to slay the sword Wushuang by the way. Not only did he not die, but in a short time, he actually grew to such an amazing level that it was enough to shock the Supreme. This feeling, like everything he did, became a stepping stone for Sword Unparalleled, which made him extremely angry. Waste. It's all waste. What Diwu Shrine Master can't even win a sword master who controls the realm? Bingyu Extreme clenched his fists tightly, and his mouth made a chilling murmur. Outside the main hall, the other main hall owners sighed, wondering what to say. For the first time, they somehow felt a slight regret. The habitat of the Jinwu tribe in the solar star field. In the sun occupied by King Jinwu. Lin Heir, have your injuries recovered? A majestic voice sounded. Immediately, he saw a middle-aged man wearing an imperial robe of fire, and approaching step by step. It was the Emperor Jinwu. Father, the baby's injuries have been recovered as much as possible, and the retreat has recently realized something, and his strength has improved. The Emperor Jin Wu was originally enlightened, and when he heard the voice, he stood up immediately and looked back and smiled. Yes, the more frustrated you can be, the more you wait for it, the better you will be. Emperor Jinwu saw a touch of admiration. It's still a long way to go for the child. Speaking of all this, I have to thank the father for the mention that day, so that the child's heart was wide open. And then he realized the opportunity. Emperor Jinwu said humbly, but deep in his eyes, there was a flash of unconscious pride. This pride comes from his confidence in his own strength. Now he does not say that it is comparable to the supreme, but he can definitely take the supreme blow. After a pause, the Emperor Jinwu continued, Father, the child is ready, and he will rise from wherever he fell. It happened that the child heard that Jian Wushuang had left the ancient road of Xingkong and planned to fight him this time. The child's self-confidence will surely defeat Jian Wushuang. After that, Emperor Jinwu raised his chin and looked forward to Emperor Jinwu quite expectantly. However, he found that Emperor Jinwu's expression was strange. Father, what's wrong? Is there anything wrong with it? Is the father worried about the child's defeat? King Jinwu scratched his head and then smiled. Father Wang must not worry. Now I am absolutely enough to make peace with sword warriors one world war. After waiting for him to finish, I saw the Emperor Jinwu took a deep breath, interrupted his words and slowly said, Lin Heir, you have recently retreated and missed the latest news about Jian Wushuang. Ah, couldn't Murphy Sword Wushu have been killed? That's a pity. The Emperor Jinwu didn't answer, but he took out a jade tube and handed it to the Emperor Jinwu. Look at it yourself. After speaking, the Emperor Jinwu turned away. Why is my father so strange today? Emperor Jinwu had a doubt in his heart, and then opened the jade tube. After a while, extreme sword cut. Liantu Shenjing. Emperor Jinwu opened his mouth wide, and his eyes were filled with horror. Beauty Pavilion headquarters. A pavilion made of red tiles and bluestone is suspended in the air quietly. In the pavilion, the three supremes sat around a round table. In front of them, each had a roll of detailed information about the two supremes. Heart killing. Isn't this sword Wushuang the same kid you saved in Jiui Starfield? An old man in red robes looked at the three of them, and the old man in the middle said with a smile. And this old man of Qing dynasty, who was in the Jiuyin Star realm, saved the sword master of the sword master Shuangshou when he first saved this son. But he did it by hand, but it did not think of this opportunity. Heartbeat Supreme heard the words said with a smile. Among the three, the last supreme was a purple-haired boy who said blankly, Red ears killing heart. Now we are discussing the attitude of Beauty Pavilion towards Jian Wushuang. After a moment of pause, the purple-haired boy continued to say in a deep voice, The Taro Excalibur is a heavy weapon in the universe. Now almost the entire universe is supreme, and the Terra Excalibur is eager for it. The palace exerts pressure to discuss swords. As a top force in the universe, how should we treat our attitude? Chapter 43-18 Battle of the Gods, Part 2. The entire universe seemed to have fallen into a boiling chaos. Countless words could be used to describe the horror of this battle. Countless holes appeared in the sky, and the ground was constantly being shattered. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Supreme Heavenly Dipper's expression was cold and detached. Every arrow that was shot out blocked the escape routes of the seven great rulers, leaving bloody holes in their bodies. The battle between the Blood Wave Supreme, the South Sea Supreme, and the Blood Sky Palace's Deputy Palace Master was even more terrifying. At this moment, everyone finally realized how terrifying the ruler Blood Wave was. 3,000 great Daos emerged from the Blood Wave Supreme's body and turned into a world of corpses and blood. The divine bodies of South Sea Supreme and the Deputy Palace Master of Blood Sky Palace were continuously destroyed as they cried out in pain. South Sea Supreme and the Deputy Hall Master of Blood Sky Hall were both high-level and top-tier Supremes in the universe, but they were unable to retaliate against the Blood Wave Supreme. They were constantly defeated, and were in imminent danger. Although the Blood Wave Supreme was only a top-tier Supreme, he was much stronger than ordinary top-tier Supremes in terms of combat power. Although he seemed to be in a difficult position when he faced the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple, he had an overwhelming advantage when he was facing a supreme being of the same realm. The battle had entered a state of slaughter from the very beginning, with Supreme Heavenly Dipper cutting off their escape route. The 7 great Supremes were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, constantly being slaughtered. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath. At that moment, his divine power had finally recovered completely. Immediately after, he turned his gaze to the Master of Lotus Island, the acrid and mean old woman. No one knew if it was intentional or not, but Supreme Blood Wave and the others had made the old woman stay. You should die. Jian Wushuang looked at the old woman coldly. When the old woman heard this, her expression changed and she shrieked. Jian Wushuang, what are you doing? Jian Wushuang did not answer. Instead, he raised the Tarot Divine Sword and swept it toward the old woman. When the old woman saw this, a cold light flashed in her eyes. She understood that the situation had already been decided. If there were no accidents, she would not be able to escape death. The only chance of survival was Jian Wushuang. If he wanted to live, there was only one way, and that was to abduct Jian Wushuang and threaten the 5 lead Supremes of the Divine Life Palace to let him leave. Thinking of this, a cold sneer appeared on the old woman's face. She muttered to herself, Jian Wushuang, oh Jian Wushuang, since you're looking for death, don't blame me. Bang! As soon as she finished speaking, the old woman turned over her right hand and took out a lotus lamp from her interspatial ring. There was no fire on the lotus lamp, but there was a flirtatious red lotus swaying slightly, emitting a faint red light, reflecting the old woman's face, making it even uglier. Slash! Jian Wushuang's eyes were cold, and his black hair was flying in the air. He slashed the Tarot Divine Sword at the old woman. A brilliant sword pressure descended, instantly snatching away all the brilliant light in the area. Like a river of stars, it pressed down on the old woman. This sword cut across the sky and pierced through the sun and moon. Looking at the dazzling Tarot Divine Sword, the old woman's eyes were filled with surprise. Then, the surprise in her eyes was replaced by regret. Old friend, I'm counting on you this time. She looked down at the red lotus lamp in her hand and muttered to herself. With a push of her hands, the red lotus lamp immediately shot out and shone brightly in the air. Countless rays of red light shot out, like the sunset glow at night, painting the starry sky a gorgeous red. The lotus core of the red lotus lamp suddenly expanded in the wind and turned into a towering red lotus that connected heaven and earth. The next moment, bang! The Tarot Divine Sword ruthlessly slashed at the red lotus. A strange scene appeared. After the Tarot Sword struck the red lotus, the red lotus suddenly began to absorb the endless power of the Tarot Sword like a balloon. What? Seeing this, Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. Kacha! Kacha! In the next moment, the lotus lamp started to crack. It was like a bucket with a sealed mouth that was constantly filled with water. Finally, it could not take it anymore and exploded. Bang! With a wail, the towering lotus flower broke into pieces. The power of the Tarot Divine Sword had also disappeared. Seeing this, a touch of resentment flashed across the old woman's face. She stared at Jian Wushuang and said coldly, Jian Wushuang, you've caused my treasure to be destroyed. You deserve to die. After she finished speaking, the old woman laughed and countless red lotus fire surged around her and rushed toward Jian Wushuang. Seeing this, Jian Wushuang was slightly surprised, but he didn't panic. This time, when he used the Tarot Divine Sword, he didn't use all of his divine power. He still had some power left, which was enough to deal with the old woman. Just as the old woman was about to catch Jian Wushuang, and he was about to use the Daybreak Sword to end her life. Puffed! The sound of an arrow breaking through the air rang out. A spear-like scarlet arrow broke through the void and pierced through the divine body of the Lotus Island Master. Along with the remaining force, it was sent flying. Ah! Arg! The old woman screamed in pain. Divine power burst out from the scarlet arrow and shattered her divine body. The master of Lotus Island had fallen. In the distance, Supreme Heavenly Dipper looked at Jian Wushuang and smiled. Little fellow, that red lotus was born from the primordial chaos and is capable of withstanding a world-destroying blow. It can be considered a life substitution talisman. Be careful. Jian Wushuang nodded at him gratefully. After the time for one incense stick to burn, Supreme Giant Axe was the first to end the battle. He turned around and strode in the direction of the Blood Wave Supreme's battle. After the time for 3 incense sticks to burn. At this point, other than the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple, the other 6 great Supremes had been completely massacred by the joint forces of Supreme Blood Wave and the others. At this moment, the cold wind whimpered and the great Tao wailed. It was as if the heavens and earth were mourning for the 6 great rulers. The fall of 6 great masters, how shocking was this? Once it was spread, the entire universe would be shaken. After killing their respective opponents, Supreme Giant Axe, Supreme Blood Wave, and the other 2 stopped and looked into the distance with their hands behind their backs. There were only 2 people there. The Hall Master of Cosmos Temple and Supreme Master Gai Fu. At this moment, the expression of the Hall Master of Cosmos Temple was extremely ugly. He was no longer as calm as before, and was staring at Supreme Master Gai Fu with fear in his eyes. Gai Fu, you can't even protect yourself now. Do you really want to waste your chance to attack for Jian Wushuang? The Palace Master of Cosmos Temple growled. Supreme Master Gai Fu's expression was neither happy nor sad when he heard this. He did not reply, and only extended a finger to point at the great Cosmos Temple Master's glabella. Rumble! In an instant, a destructive aura that seemed to come from the ancient times, which caused the universe to perish, the chaos to boil, and the great Tao to be annihilated, rose in the void and slowly condensed. Chapter 43:19. When the words of Supreme fell down, all the 4 Supremes present flashed their eyes. What Gavo means they already understand. Yes, our shrine of life has always been indisputable in the world, but it does not mean that anyone can step on our faces. Supreme White Tiger Supreme, the most irritable character, stood up immediately and said with a cold hum. I saw his eyes skyrocketing, taking on the meaning of warfare and sneering. Speaking of it, this battle just happened, but just another battle. The 3 great Supremes, such as Blood Wave, although not directly declared war against the Supreme of the White Tiger, also filled with boiling warfare. They have never been afraid. Gav Supreme, seeing like this, deep in the muddy eyes, could not help flashing a touch of appreciation. Nodded his head. Supreme continued to say, the old man has been summoned to make the disciples who have traveled in the universe, except the disciples in the Shinkong Ancient Road, have been repatriated to the Temple of Life. At the same time, you go back and inform your disciples. During this period, the Temple of Life forbids the disciples from going out, and starts preparing for war. Yes, the 4 Supremes should suddenly be. Supreme Gap said, well, and said, except for Jian Wushuang. Everyone else is waiting. Let's get away. The 4 Supreme Masters heard a word, but without thinking they left. After a while in the Supreme Temple, there were only 2 men, Jian Wushuang and Gafu Supreme. Jian Wushuang looked up at Supreme Gav, and there was some doubt in his heart. What did Supreme Gav mean to leave him alone? Sword unparalleled, give Tai Lao Excalibur to the old man. Gafu Supreme expressed expressionlessly, indifferently. Jian Wushuang heard the words. His eyes could not help but hesitate. No more hesitation, nodded. It is good. Having said that, Jian Wushuang strode forward and pulled back the Taro Excalibur, pushing it horizontally to Jeff. Gawaf took the Taro sword, lowered his head and looked at it slightly, sighing slightly. This sword, when the old man saw it last time, the old man was still there. Goodbye this time. There were already hundreds in a blink of an eye. Chaos era. Jian Wushuang did not disturb Gafu Supreme, but stood silently. Put down the Tai Luo Divine Sword. Gafu Supreme looked at Jian Wushuang side by side and said, Sword Wushuang, presumably Tai Luo Sword Code, have you got it? Jian Wushuang nodded when he heard the words. In front of Supreme Lord Gafu, he had no intention of hiding, and replied in a respectful voice. Yes. Gafu Supreme heard a slight smile and said, swords are unparalleled, and you can get Taro's heritage, which is also a chance for you. But you must remember that you must have a long-term vision. The way of others is ultimately others. You can't rely on your own way. Only by enlightening and developing your own way can you truly achieve a climate and have the qualification to reach the peak of the universe. Do you understand? Thank you for mentioning Supreme. Jian Wushuang heard the words and quickly arched. He was not a stupid person, so he naturally read it out, and the Supreme Lord deliberately left him, for fear that he would only rely on the power of relying on the Taro Excalibur, and ignore his own growth. Good. Gafu Supreme saw this, nodded slightly, and there was a touch of relief in his eyes. Immediately, he waved his big hand on the Terra Excalibur, and retransmitted the Terra Excalibur to the sword Wushuang. The sword is unparalleled. The old man has planted a ban on the Terra Excalibur, and sealed the power and breath of the Terra Excalibur. You must not use the Terra Excalibur unless you have a last resort. Jian Wushuang took over the Terra Excalibur, and suddenly felt that his connection with the Terra Excalibur was still there, but invisible. There was an additional barrier. Before long, Gafu Supreme waved. Jian Wushuang, you go. Jian Wushuang nodded, no longer delayed. The laser shot away. In the Supreme Temple, there was only one Gafu Supreme left, and it gradually became quiet. Gafu Supreme sat in the first place, and sighed suddenly. He raised his head. His eyes seemed to penetrate the Temple of Life, and looked at the starry sky of Wuxia, muttering to himself. Palace, is the old man righteous, right or wrong? Regarding the impending storm in the Temple of Life, even though he could not help but feel a little confused. Jian Wushuang flickered through the sky of the Palace of Life, suddenly causing exclaims. Brother Jian Wushuang is back. This is Brother Jian Wushuang? His breath is so strong. Some disciples who are new to the Shrine of Life have one after another call out. The sword has no footsteps, turned into a blaze and passed over them. Before long, Jian Wushuang returned to the sixth mountain, belonging to his manor. In the manor there is a small lake. A beautiful woman with a tall figure was standing by the lakeside of the manor, and sprinkling some fishing bait. After the fishing bait was sprayed, it instantly caused the thousands of koi carps to tumbling like a red tide, which was quite spectacular. But this beautiful woman's brows frowned, and her look was not fluctuated, and she looked very serious. Schwanger, I have kept you waiting. Suddenly, a familiar thick voice sounded in her ear. Suddenly, this beautiful woman was throwing the bait in her right hand and froze. She turned towards the young man with a soft smile on the back and ran away. Even the bait in her hand was spilled. Fu Jun I wait for you so hard. Puff. Lung Rushuang smashed into Jian Wushuang's arms, his eyes flushed for a while. Missing for tens of thousands of years, she is unparalleled in swords, and has long missed her. Especially when she heard from the mouth of the disciples of Life Shrine that Jian Wushuang died in the hands of Prison Dragon, and was hunted down by the Supreme. Her heart was even more severe. She wants to leave the Temple of Life countless times to find Jian Wushuang, but she knows that with her cultivation, even if she finds Jian Wushuang, she can't help Jian Wushuang at all. She has always been very sensible, therefore, she can only hold back all the urgency in her heart, waiting for Jian Wushuang's return every night and night, suffering alone. Fortunately, Jian Wushuang finally returned. Schwanger, don't worry, I'm fine. Jian Wushuang held cold as frost in his arms, and gently patted his back with his right hand, comforting his warm voice. Fu Jun, don't you leave me alone next time, okay? I'm so scared that I'll never see you again. Cold as frost lifted his head, some tearful eyes cried. Jian Wushuang saw this a sigh in my heart. It is good. At the same time, in the extreme north of the universe, a Tibetan year was covered by the nebula thunder, and no bright huge star field was visible. A black mang reached the extreme speed, flew from a distance, then stopped suddenly, and stopped in front of this huge star field. Hymen shattered, revealing a majestic middle-aged man. He looked up at this thunderous lightning flash, a huge nebula of stars, and arched his hands in a deep voice. Hey, you come to meet the dragons and talk about important things. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.